Are you ready for Season 3 of Discography? We're jumping into the deep end of The Who. Not only will we go through every Studio Who album in great detail, but their story is often told between albums, so we'll be touching on non-album singles, the solo works of Keith Moon, John Entwistle, Roger Daltrey, and Pete Townsend, and some of the events that would make a record begin as a concept and land as something that would universally change the world. Discography returns to Consequence Podcast Network in January of 2019. Until then, be lucky.
Consequence Podcast Network.
My friendship to all of you precludes my involvement with any one of you. But if you wanna make love, then I do too, and I'll be right there behind you. All in the name of oh, all in the name of oh, all in the name of oh.
Greetings, constant listeners, and welcome once again to the Losers Club, a Stephen King podcast from Consequence of Sound. I am one of your many hosts this morning, this afternoon, whatever time we're recording this at. My name is Justin Germer. I'm a senior writer at Consequence of Sound. Hey, put on a comfortable pair of cowboy boots, grab a true thread mule, and I'm talking about one of those cheap muties, and kick back as we discuss the first book from what King himself describes as his magnum opus, The Dark Tower. And this first book goes by the name of The Gunslinger. But before we chase down the man in black, Walter Martin, or whatever the hell his name is, let's go around and introduce ourselves. After we introduce ourselves, let's talk about when we were first introduced to The Dark Tower, and a fan favorite segment, what copy we read when we were reading The Dark Tower, The Gunslinger. So let's start off to my right. Who are you?
I'm Allison Zoltan, the eye-eating bird shoemaker.
Who likes to tell fart jokes?
Yeah, I love it. Also beans are really good. Let's not hate on them.
They're magical.
They're very magical. So I was first introduced to The Dark Tower when I was in my Stephen King kick when I was young. So God, I bet I was 12. And it's the Gunslinger is the only book in the series I've read.
Ooh.
So I'm really excited. First of all, I was very excited to reread it. And then beyond that, I'm really excited to get to dive into the rest of the series. I just I never picked another one up. I don't know why. So yeah, I'm really stoked about it.
Well, this is exciting. We've got to make sure you're on these episodes.
I read the Kindle edition, which is digital and searchable, and also has an audio function.
Oh, I see the cover is the reissue, the movie cover, right?
Yes, a movie I haven't seen because literally everyone I know said, don't waste your time. So not even, we were just talking about this, not even the power of Idris Elba could compel me to see that movie.
Wow,
dodged,
that's a
big deal.
Power.
That's a big deal. You dodged one of the Gunslinger's bullets in that one. Let me ask you a question, Allison. In your edition, because sometimes in Kindle they still have the illustrations. Were the illustrations in your copy or not?
No illustrations.
That's just We'll get to mine as well, but we'll talk about the gray illustrations later. Allison, who is that in front of you?
I don't
know. Who is that?
I'm seeing as though through a haze across a great desert.
Oh, well, emerging from Athene here is Mackenzie the Mutie Gerber. And I am also a constant contributor to Consequence of Sound and a constant contributor, once again, to the Losers Club podcast. I am trying to currently figure out what version I read because I don't have my book with me. It's definitely the revised. I think it might be.
I know which one you have. I think you have actually the very first revised edition. It's the one where Roland is looking down at a bird.
Yeah. That's not going to hinder me during this, but yeah. That's and I only read these like 3-4 years ago. I started reading. These are the first This is actually the first Stephen King book I ever read.
Yeah,
I read it in middle school, and for a book report, and I think it was the 6th grade. I just remember powering through the last 50 pages to get that book report done, and then revisited it recently. Justin got me all the books as a Christmas gift.
To guilt you into reading them.
To guilt me into reading all of them, so I did, and I loved it. And then I've since become a huge Stephen King fan and continued to read on.
It's strange. Yeah, you and Allison both read The Gunslinger around the same age, I guess. 12 years old, right? Interesting.
That must be why we're so deeply messed up.
That's right.
Very true.
And then Mac finished it off. And now you'll be even more messed up when you finish these, Allison.
Impossible. Impossible.
I read, it's the great reissuing of Stephen King books right now, the Simon & Schuster edition. It's a really uninspired cover. It's just a shadowy dark tower. It's the gunslinger looking down with a crow behind him flying. Unfortunately, this edition does not have any of the illustrations, much like the original copy, and even Mac's revised edition does have the 5 illustrations that I think that show up in each chapter of the book and are beautiful illustrations by Michael Whelan. These reissues, for some reason, don't have them, even though the Stand one does have illustrations from Bernie Wrightson, so I'm not sure. Simon Schuster, if you're out there, let's do another reissue, and this time include the illustrations. Let's get down to it. What do you think? What's everybody else doing over here? How's everybody else feeling? I don't know. And somebody was somehow quiet this entire time. He's, for the first time, calling in from the hot desert. Well, not really a desert. It's just kind of it's a weird heat down there in Austin, Texas. You know him, you love him, you remember him. He's still with us. It's loser Dan Caffrey. Dan.
Hey, surprise, everyone! Hello. Coming at you from the. Well, I was actually just gonna make a reference that would spoil something in a later book, so I won't say it. Yeah, I'm in Texas. It's actually really cold down here now. I saw an outdoor concert last night, and it was in the 40s, which felt crazy. But yeah, I read the Gunslinger when I think I was about 10. My dad had this huge shelf of Stephen King books, and he had all the Dark Tower books up until that point, which I think was just The Wasteland. And they looked so much different from the rest of Stephen King books because of the fantasy element, because of the illustrations. He had, I guess technically it's not the first edition, because the first edition was this limited edition that now is like thousands of dollars if you want, or hundreds of dollars if you want to find it. But it's the Plume first edition, like where they collected it, 5 years later or whatever, with the Michael Whelan illustrations. And I was lucky enough, a coworker of Allison and mine back in the Groupon days, I randomly ran into her and her boyfriend were having a yard sale, and they were selling like these second editions of all of the Dark Tower books. So I picked up The Wasteland, Gunslinger, and Drawing of the Three. All for a fine price. We'll say that much.
$15.
Yeah, not even. It was like, I think it was like $6 for
wow.
3 of them. In pretty good shape. So that's the version I had here. I know we were reading the revised one. So what I did was, there are a ton of sites that illustrate what the differences are between the original and the expanded revised one. So I kind of, when I got to those points, I read the newer versions, which I definitely want to talk about because there's some kind of clumsy stuff in the old version that gets retconned later on. But yeah, so the Dark Tower books are weird because I read the 3 of them, and it was such a long time before Wizard and Glass came out, I remember. So it was like, I remember like having to reread all of them once those new books started coming out again, just so I could keep track of what was happening, because the plot gets pretty Byzantine eventually, to say the least.
Yeah, I had my experience was in my 20s actually when I read it, and I just so happened to be introduced to the series by a coworker of mine. She lent me the first 5 books, I guess it was, and it just so happened that the 6th and 7th book were coming out that next year. So it was very, very fresh, and I really just, especially once you get into the second book, you can really start burning through these because the quality leap is very noticeable. By the first chapter of the second book, not to do shots fired against the Gunslinger, but which is a fine book in its own right. But the series really defines what it is and goes on its true path come the second novel.
Sure.
But yeah, so that's my brief story right there with them. I've actually read this series twice, so this is going to be my 3rd go round with the series, and I was surprised that I'm still picking up things. And we'll talk about the very end of this. We'll talk about little things to keep in mind going ahead, things that you might not think that you need to remember, but will definitely come in handy come future books. And it's good to know that Allison has not read the future books, so I'll be even that more inclined to not spoil anything, as little as possible going in.
Well, I think we should do that for our listeners in general. But
Exactly.
I do have to say, when you write about film and TV all the time, you lose the privilege of hearing about spoilers.
There are no
Like,
spoiler alerts.
I know everything that happens on every television show all the time now. There's nothing.
It's true.
I'm completely up to date on Game of Thrones, and I haven't watched an episode in 2.5 years.
Wow.
So
That's like me in The Walking
As
Dead.
an
I feel like I
example.
know I haven't watched The Walking Dead in like 5 years. I could probably tell you everybody who's still alive,
Yeah.
everybody who's dead, just by pictures and
congratulations
headlines.
to both of us on not watching The Walking Dead anymore.
I'm pretty happy with that achievement. One of my finest achievements of the last 5 years, actually.
Good choice. Dan, are you still on that beat?
I'm not. It was funny because our buddy Josh Michael, who's on The Walking Dead a lot this season. I think he's going to be on like 7 episodes or something. He texted me last night. He's like, "Oh, dude, are you doing the reviews?" And I'm like, "No, just because of school. I have to be pretty limited in what I review for television, just because he has to be home and stuff." I have not been watching it as the de facto Walking Dead defender. I will be watching it. You know, I have to keep up. Someone has to fight the good fight. The show's not popular enough, so they need someone defending it. I'll probably be watching it.
Yeah, it's a real cult hit. You're really keeping that thing alive for AMC.
Hovering up, the cancellation bear is coming for it any day now.
Or a
I'll probably-
cancellation
yeah.
tiger in this show's case.
Who's on that tiger is like on the banner this season, like it's the main character. Or something. But yeah, I'll watch it eventually because I'm still getting the screeners and I do want to kind of keep up with it. And they're following the comics pretty closely, so it should go some interesting places. But needless to say, I have not. I mean, I guess it's only had 2 episodes this season so far. Like just came back, right?
Yeah, I think what's been happening, I think Rick gives a speech and he walks around the forest for a couple minutes or something. Something invigorating. I really love The Walking Dead here. I shouldn't be making fun of it. I'm kidding. It's awful. Anyway, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, the 7-part Dark Tower series. So those are big introductions to the book. Let's talk a little bit about the history behind this book. Now, this is a book that King started writing on when he was very, very young. I think he was still in high school at the time, or maybe just coming out of college. And it took him 12 years to complete it, but the book is broken down into 5 sections, and those sections were each released separately between 1978 all the way to 1981, actually, in the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction. Now, I have a question. How unimaginative is that magazine title, by the way? The Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction? Couldn't they have come up with something a little more creative
Fantastical?
or fantastical?
Yeah.
Just call it fantastical or something like that. I don't know. That's kind of lame of them. Needless to say, I don't think that magazine's still around. And if it is, it sounds pretty lame to me. I was more of a Starlog Fangoria person, I guess.
Oh
when I
yeah,
was a kid.
Starlog.
And that actually kind of reminds me of when the Green Mile was released in chapters, in little chapter books. It kind of reminded me of that too, I guess.
I want you to know that you just defamed the great magazine of fantasy and science fiction, which is still in operation.
Uh-oh.
After first opening its doors, pages, covers, whatever you like, in 1949.
Wow, it's going strong for 68
so shut
years.
Your foul mouth, Gerber.
I feel bad now. Did they change the name of it?
No.
Hey, don't at me on Twitter, by the way, if you're big fans of this magazine. Right? I apologize. Big apologies. I stand by my criticism of the name, not the content, but the name. So yeah, that's a little bit of a brief history behind this, and this is very much King's kind of combination of Sergio Leone's The Man with No Name movies, his spaghetti westerns with Clint Eastwood back in the 60s, and what's pretty obvious is King's love of Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. So that's that's the basic history behind it. Anybody else have any little more history they'd like to share about the Gunslinger or the Dark Tower?
I just realized that when I first read the Gunslinger, it was the Signet edition, and it was pre-2003, so it was the original.
Yeah, you definitely read the original version.
Yeah.
Mine was too. All I remember is thinking that was good, and then apparently promptly forgetting about it, and not finishing it.
Well, I remember I was like you. I was like, oh, that was good, and I started to read Drawing of the Three, and at the age I was, I couldn't comprehend. I couldn't fathom what was going on with the lobstrosities, and I checked out. I checked out. I was like, this isn't a cool Western, fantasy. I don't know. I couldn't handle the level of intricacy that the Drawing of the Three throws at you at that age, and
it's much more epic.
Had to go back to it, and now that's like my favorite book. But yeah.
I would say I have two things. I would ask listeners if anyone has the first edition, not the Plume one that I had, but like the limited first edition that was a few thousand copies, where the first time they compiled all the stories together. Definitely post that, because I've never seen a copy of that at all. I think the cover is the illustration with Roland firing at the slow mutants as Jake is on his leg.
Yeah, it's that illustration that's in the book, Dan, because we went to a book fair here in Chicago, actually, and they had that edition there.
Oh, man. Wait, how much was it?
I don't remember. It was expensive. None of us bought it for that. I think if we could pooled our efforts, we were still not going to be able to reason buying that particular edition.
Yeah, because I think it was valuable even when it came out, because it was like that version of it that came out a few years ago where it was, I don't know, 500 copies or something crazy.
With all illustrations on it, yeah.
Yeah, I've never seen a copy of that, and I want to. The second thing, this is something I remember reading when I was a kid, but I can't find any evidence of it, so I probably just made it up. But I remember reading some kind of intro to one of the books by Stephen King, where he talked about how he had paid to be with a prostitute when he was really young, and he woke up and started the Dark Tower right after that. But I don't think that's true, because I can't find evidence of that anywhere. So don't take that as fact. But if anyone like remembers that, definitely post, because I must be going crazy. I'm not sure.
That's such a weird story to remember, and saying it's not true. Did you just come up with that one day? Did you wake up from a dream?
I feel like Dan woke up from his dream and applied to grad school after that the next day or something like that. So
well, I think what it is that a lot of us read a lot of these books when we were really young, and I don't want to say too young to be reading them, but I think there's certain things maybe you just don't quite understand. Like I don't remember reading the infamous scene from It when I first read It. Like, I just don't remember that scene being there, because I probably didn't get what was going on. So maybe I read something else with Roland waking up after a bout of sex, which he has a lot of in these books, and conflated with Stephen King's intro. I'm not sure. So I don't want anyone to think I'm slandering Sally King, but I always remember that, but I can't find it anywhere, so I probably made it up or confused it.
I think it's funny how the brain does that. Like, you can media that at least some part of your brain is ready for when you're a kid, and then later, years later, you go, oh, that's what that was really about. Example, when you watch Dirty Dancing when you're a tiny child, you definitely don't realize it's about one stranger helping another stranger get an abortion, an illegal abortion.
No. Imagine the tagline if the poster was the same, and what would the tagline of that movie have been if it was truly about what the movie was?
I've had the time of my life helping you get an abortion.
Yeah, I've had the time of my life in the waiting room. Let's make more fun of abortion, I guess. Where do we even go from here now? I'm trying to think. There's abortion in this book, actually. They could have talked about that, too, I guess.
Oh, boy, that is an interesting scene.
And we'll get to that later on. But let's talk about...
Yes. Don't you see? Don't you see how clear it all is? Not only can you see the future, I can change it. You can change it, exactly.
This is King's take on the epic hero's journey. This is very different from his other novels that had come out up until this point. Again, The Mouth No Name, Lord of the Rings, all of this reads into the whole series, really.
Right.
It bleeds into it. And this particular one is about a gunslinger named Roland. The gunslinger, imagine like medieval castles, but instead of knights, there were cowboys, essentially. This is what he is. His father is kind of supposed to be like Arthur. The character Martin, aka the Man in Black, is kind of an evil Merlin, essentially. They even mention, you've heard of Merlin, right? They mention that in the book itself. The world is not just some other planet. It doesn't take place in some Western society from years ago. We find out as we go along, it takes place in this kind of alternate reality, because you hear early on there's mention of honky-tonk piano playing Hey Jude.
Yeah.
And it's little things like that really just, made me uncertain as to what journey I was going on. And it piqued my interest throughout. Even when I'm rereading it again, I think I would try to look back and think, what was I thinking the first time I read this thing? Like, what was I getting myself into at the time? I was just thinking, oh my God, there's going to be 7 books of this,
Yeah.
Anybody have any other comments about the minor? That's like the back of the book plot, I guess. So it is,
Yeah. Should we read the synopsis on the back of the book?
Thank you, man, for mentioning it. I have mine with me right here. Again, this is the great Simon & Schuster, who really just inflates plot, like the Cujo one. Remember the Cujo one?
Boy.
And then Roadwork was another one that was really great description. I'll read the back of this one, though. In a desolate reality, one that mirrors our own in frightening ways, a lone and haunting figure known only as Roland makes its way across the endless sands in pursuit of a sinister, dark-robed mystery of a man. So far, so good. That's about right. Roland is the last of his kind, a gunslinger charged with protecting whatever goodness and light remains in this world. Yeah, I guess so. All right. A world that moved on, as they say. And the only way he can possibly hope to save everything is to first outwit and confront this man in black that make him divulge his many arcane secrets. For despite the countless miles he's already traversed, Roland knows these will merely be his initial steps on his spellbinding and soul-shattering quest to locate the mystical nexus of all worlds, all universes, the Dark Tower. That's actually pretty good. That's a pretty good description.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll catch your attention.
Yep.
It's not necessarily totally accurate.
Yeah, the goodness thing, I don't know about anything about this. The goodness and light at this point.
The book seems to think that Roland knows a lot more than Roland knows in this book, anyway.
Yeah, in this book, yeah. I agree, 100%.
Can I just read?
Little synopsis.
Yeah, Dan, if you got your book.
Yeah.
What edition do you have?
This is the Plume. This is the first like non-exclusive edition. I don't have to go through the whole thing, but I do want to read just some of the character descriptions. So at first it just talks about this is the first time it's available, widespread, and then it goes on to the plot. Okay, a spellbinding tale of good versus evil. It features one of Stephen King's most powerful creations, the Gunslinger, a haunting figure who embodies the qualities of the lone hero through the ages from ancient myths to frontier Western legends. His pursuit of the man in black, his liaison with the sexually ravenous Alice, his friendship with the kid from Earth called Jake are part of a drama that is both grippingly realistic and eerily dreamlike, an alchemy of storytelling sorcery. I just thought sexually ravenous was like, that sounds about right for the 80s and in King Pound Cake Land.
Oh boy,
that does disservice to the Alice character, the Allie character, who I actually like in this book.
Yep.
Who
I do too, yeah.
turns the tables in many ways, especially for King's writing.
And what's on the cover of that book?
It's pretty cool. You get a bonus Michael Whelan illustration. It's Roland. It's funny. It's Roland with Zoltan on his shoulder, which I thought would have made more sense had David on his shoulder. Although I guess that would have had to have made Roland a teenager. The Dark Tower is in the background, rising out of the mist, and an upside down sun is rising below it. It's it's a really cool illustration. I love the artwork in
I've seen that copy before.
Oh yeah,
that's an awesome one. Yeah.
And I love too in this edition they have like the detailed illustration that you already mentioned, one per chapter. But then in the opening of each chapter, they have a little they have almost more of like a Bernie Wrightson type illustration at the top. So the first one is Zoltan, and then the T that starts the first sentence, the men in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. The T has a jawbone sketched around it, like hanging on it. So it's get some bonus stuff in there too.
Yeah,
Good
all
stuff.
that again.
Cool.
All of that is missing in the Schuster and the Simon and Schuster edition.
That's
all
weird,
of it.
'cause
All the
yeah.
illustrations are gone. It just for the intros. It just says the way station. That's it. There's no illustration. Goes on to the next chapter. It's sorely missing.
It's possible that if Simon & Schuster has a copy that's not mass market, like if you get it in trade paperback,
Very
that it
possible.
might have that stuff. But yeah, what a bummer.
Because I've read
Yeah,
other
it
paperbacks
adds
that
so
have
much
it, you
to
know.
it, yeah.
But hey, Simon Schuster, you blew it because a lot of the power behind these releases were how popular the illustrations were. You know.
Mm-hmm. And it's for me. I don't know. The illustrations were such an appealing part of it. For all the books, reading it as a kid and then as an adult, it's such because it separates it from the rest of King's work. It makes it something special. You know. Yeah.
And the brief rundown of those illustrations that you can find in most editions, except again for Simon and Schuster for some reason. You get the end of the Battle of Tull. You see the outcome with all the bodies lying down on him in the distance. We see Hax. We see his hanging. Hax is hanging, and young Roland and young. Some people say Cuthbert. Some people say Cuthbert. So it's a bit of a debate about that. Him looking at the cook hanging. Roland, I think right before he encounters the Oracle, Mono E Oracle.
When he's at the pond.
Yeah, the pond.
Mm-hmm.
A great one of the slow mutants grabbing at Jake, which looks like a bunch of golems grabbing at
That's
Jake. That's
also the original cover, isn't it?
That's what Dan was talking about. Yeah. And the last one's my favorite one. It's at the very end of the book of Roland on the beach, looking off in the distance, and you see the Dark Tower off in it's a beautiful Michael Whelan.
Gorgeous.
That is sorely missing from this edition I have.
Yeah.
But it's a powerful image, and it kind of makes you want to just see what happens next. And you should, because again, Drawing 3 is really, really good. I'm looking forward to talking about that in about 6 months. But let's kind of amble on forward here. Let's talk a little bit about the structure and format of this book.
Look at me. Look at me, teacher.
Again, we've mentioned it before, but it's broken down into 5 chapters. It's 5 short stories, essentially. I mean, that's how it was kind of released anyway, in the famous, again, magazine of fantasy and science fiction. Can't forget it.
The revered magazine of fantasy and science
Going 68 years strong.
Award-winning.
Post-World War II, just before the Cold War really kicked off. Wonderful era. The big thing about this book, though, that will seep its way into future books, but the major thing is there's a lot of flashback in this, to the point where I was almost like, wait, did this already happen? When it kind of goes back and forth with that, because it picks up with the gunslinger continuing his quest to locate the man in black, but then we go back and we talk about Tull and his meetings with Allie and what happens there, and that kind of goes forward a little bit more. We meet Jake, and there's some more flashback about Roland when he was very, very young, back at home and becoming a gunslinger for the first time. My question to you two is, it's a pretty short book, so were the flashbacks jarring at all, or did they feel natural? Or how did everybody feel about the flashbacks here? Allison, if you want to go first.
To me, there was a point, maybe 2/3 of the way through, when I was so invested in what was happening that every time it was time to stop and tell a story, even when, it's a great sequence when he's just sort of nervously babbling all of these things about his life because he's sort of confronted what he's going to do to Jake with Jake, and Jake sort of knows. So it's an interesting means of bringing out all of this exposition while also keeping the river of character development going, or whatever. God, what a terrible phrase. I'm just going to own it.
Think about Billy Joel, the river.
But at the same time, it was such there was so much momentum that then to stop was a little bit rough. But for the most part, I think the flashbacks tend to mirror the intensity of what's going on in the current day plot pretty well. So I didn't find it all that jarring.
Yeah. Mac?
What about you, Mac?
No, when I first read it, I remember being really thrown off by the flashbacks because I was just not very interested in his history. Again, I'm reading it as in middle school. I was just way more about the adventure aspect of it and the gunslinging adventure. So it took me a while. When I reread it, I really appreciated that, obviously, because I was much more able to appreciate the slow burn and the character building. But it didn't bug me. If anything, I was actually really excited to hit those points because that ended up being what I loved the most, was the history of the gunslinger, court, and just all of that stuff. And I really, as the books go on and stuff, I really loved Midworld and always wanted more Midworld. And I feel like, kind of stray from that here and there. But I think that's also why I love Wizard and Glass.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that in probably a year or two from now. Who knows when we get to that. You won't have to wait as long to hear our episode that you had to wait between Wasteland and Wizard and Glass. I'll say that much. Dan, what about you? How did you feel about the structure of the book, the flashbacks in particular?
I loved it, and it's funny because I know it does stall the momentum, and I know it's a lot of wandering through the desert and stopping and telling a tale for a while, as opposed to the later books, which are much more plot focused. But just in terms of atmosphere, it's so different from anything Stephen King had done up until that point. It almost reminds me of like Jodorowsky movies, El Topo and was it Holy Mountain, and which once again I know are not the most exciting things, but just from a pure mood standpoint, I really love it. And it's is it a little bit clumsy and is it a little bit expositional? Yeah, but I think King was still figuring out this world very much. And I think that was the best way for him to do that. And I don't know, I just really love being taken back to Midworld, because I was also thinking up until this point, everything King has written has been on Earth, right? Like he hasn't really messed with, outside of some short stories, he hasn't really messed with other dimensions or parallel universes too much. So I think because of that, it's the novelty of it doesn't wear off for me throughout this whole book. So I guess I never get tired of it.
Yeah, because he dealt with the future, obviously, with the Long Walk and Running Man. But I mean, even though this is technically supposed to be kind of the time isn't specific. But it's supposed to be more during our time, but in another. We'll use a definition from future books: another where and another when, I guess you could say. But definitely the old-fashioned Western, turn of the century motif that had definitely not been explored up until this point.
And even the idea of combining, like you said, the Arthurian legend with the Western. I don't know how much that was being done in popular culture in general. I mean, nowadays we get all sorts of genre bending influences, and I don't know, the weird Western is kind of a genre in itself. But up until that point, I don't know, at least in a mainstream sense, I feel like there wasn't a lot of that. So yeah, it all feels pretty fresh all the way through.
Yeah, we had that discussion way back when we were doing Salem's Lot. Like, we didn't know how often the vampire tale had been turned on its head and modernized in such a way. I mean, it's been done so much now over the last 40 years since that book came out. But at the time, I'm sure it was even more fresh than it still reads pretty good for me anyway. Both books actually do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's the format of it. It's very different, not just in terms of its length, but in terms of its format than future books. This book to me almost reads like a prologue to the proper Dark Tower series in a lot of ways. I think if you only had 6 weeks to read the Dark Tower series, I would say you don't really have to even read the Gunslinger in a lot of ways. I think, I will say, I mean, look, there's a lot of stuff here that sets some things in motion later on. Obviously, the whole Jake thing is much more powerful. Not to give any spoilers away, the Jake thing is very powerful in this. I think it's good to know what happens to Jake in this going forward. But I don't know. It's almost like an extended prologue in a lot of ways, and I feel like that might be diminishing it in a little bit. But what can I say? That the writing gets a little stronger, the story's a little more concrete when it comes from a Stephen King, I guess 10, 20 years later. Essentially, he's a stronger writer by the time he does Drawing of the Three. I'll just say that.
I just want everybody to know that when Justin suggested that maybe you don't have to read this book if you're short on time, Mackenzie's face went slightly red and his eyes bulged out of his head a little bit.
Look, if it was
a delight.
Look, I'm not like a diehard fan of this book, but I do think, and I think this is something that was heavily missing in the movie.
But
we'll get to that.
We'll get to that in a couple hours.
And there's a reason for that also. But I think I didn't like that spin because you need what happens between Jake and Roland in this book to really see Roland change, and it also just fills a lot of gaps in terms of the idea of cause of Whelan.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Mac. I'll say that. And I do sound like I'm going against. I'm very hypocritical. It's like when people say, "Oh, you don't have to watch the second season of Friday Night Lights. You can watch the whole thing." I'm like, no, you watch the whole show, please. Don't be one of these people that skips seasons. Watch the whole thing, right? Am I right on that? I'm a completist when it comes to a lot of these things.
I am too. I think that there are certain serialized works of art where you don't have to consume all of them. For example, I would absolutely tell everyone to watch all of The West Wing, but I would also tell them to skip 2 specific episodes. And
I know which ones you're talking about.
And then I would also say that you could, in theory, start with season 2 because season 2 is kind of a backdoor pilot. The first 2 episodes of season 2 are a backdoor pilot. I think that's TV is a little bit different in that it's created in a way where they want to be able to hook people in at a later date, but. Certainly this feels like setting the stage for later books to come.
Yeah.
And I say that having only read this one. I know a lot of what is coming, and I can tell that it's laying the groundwork. But it's so short that why wouldn't you?
Exactly.
And it's really good. So you just sit in a bar and read half of it because it's not long, and then go home and read the other half, and then you're off and running. Especially
when you compare it to even something like Firestarter, which is, I think it's twice the amount of pages and like half the font that this book uses. You can appreciate this for being my edition's about 325 pages.
And you know what? This is not the shortest King book that we have read, but it is among the shorter ones, and it has the least amount of unnecessary nonsense.
That is true. There isn't really a lot of padding here. Like, the flashbacks are there. They do serve their purpose because if anything's ever going to get a little monotonous. Let's go back to an interesting story that happened 10 years ago, or an interesting story that happened a year ago. It keeps moving along, much like the Gunslinger keeps moving across that desert in chase of the Man in Black.
Well, and they're all linked to what's going on with Roland and the choices he's making through the course of this book, right? Like every flashback tells us something else about who he is and what decisions he's going to make.
Yeah, I agree. This might sound ham-fisted, but every single choice that Roland makes in these books is very, very, very important to everything going on. And that's a little teaser for the series.
And that's why Justin thinks you should skip this book.
How about this? We'll compromise. We'll compromise.
They're going to be arguing about this for 2 weeks.
Yeah. Well, it's like, skip Wastelands or something like that. No,
right.
You'd blow my head off.
It's like skip Drawing of the Three. It's not important.
God, I would give you the same look that you gave me, that violent look.
I would never say that.
I would never in my life say that. I think it's time to get really into the book and the characters that make this book, the series for that matter, and a little segment we like to call Zeros and Villains.
I'm gonna have to kill this fucking clown. Welcome to the Losers Club, asshole!
For a relatively short book, a lot of characters get introduced, but there are definitely a few that we want to make sure we give due diligence to. Let's start off with the man himself, the gunslinger, Roland Deschain of the Line of Eld. Anybody have some major thoughts you'd like to introduce about the last of the gunslingers, Roland Deschain?
Well, the thing that I love about Roland is that if you didn't know where these books were going, like, so if this is the first time you're reading this back in the 80s or late 70s or whatever, they don't make him completely good in this book, which I think is so striking. I mean, from what he does to Jake, obviously, to even how I would argue how he takes down all the people of Tull, including the woman he's just had an affair with, and that abortion scene too with the demon. I mean, there's a brutality and a real hard scrabble practicality about Roland that just hits you right off the bat. Like, you're not quite sure if this guy is good or bad for a little bit. I mean, I shouldn't say that. His mission is noble, but as far as him as a person goes, I feel like his morality, especially in these early books, is sort of always in flux. Like, I think he's always worrying about losing a piece of his soul, especially when he, sacrifices Jake for selfish reasons at the end. So that just like hits me right off the bat, and I think it's such a cool choice for a character who's a riff on knights and cowboys, who are usually wholly good characters.
I think there's a lot of selfishness that goes through this whole character throughout the entire book, even going back to the whole thing with Court, when Court is begging him not to go through his final trials of gunslingers. Like, will you please not do this? We reconsider this, and he just kind of grits his teeth, smiles, and says, "No, I'm gonna go ahead with this." Even the Man in Black at the very end, the villain, for God's sakes, the obvious like embodiment of evil, is saying, "You sure you want to do this? I'm giving you another out," But he's just so determined to do things his way, and he's still alive, obviously, in this, but it definitely affects everybody he comes in contact with, people he comes to love in some cases.
Well, I think it's an interesting way of looking at, treating morality as black and white, or pretty much any issue as black and white. And there are some things that we can all agree are like, this is definitively bad, this is definitively good. But when you decide that one thing is the be all and end all, and it is the only good thing that you can do, and you stake your whole life on that being the one thing you have to do, then it's unsurprising that you would find yourself consciously or unconsciously committing minor and major atrocities along the way, because you lose sight of what else there is in the world. So in pursuit of a quote unquote greater good, you can wind up doing a lot of harm.
Yeah, I agree.
As evidenced frequently throughout human history, and also lots and lots of other fantasy novels. It's a popular thing.
You can find a lot of stuff in the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction, by the way. Founded in 1949. Going strong. Mac?
It's true, though. No, I agree with everything that Dan pretty much said. It's not black and white, and he's got, a long road ahead of him. And I think that's why this book, again, is crucial to read, because, he's not just like this good guy. I feel like as the books go on, he's pretty much like a hero. I feel like in this book, though, he could go either way. And in many ways, I feel like he goes the wrong way.
Well, he's not Stu Redman, for example. He's definitely
absolutely.
He fucks up the entire book.
The Man with No Name is the Clint Eastwood. I mean, that's absolutely what I had in my head when I was reading this the first time. And all I can think of are some of those movies where he's not a nice guy. I mean, he's a gunslinger. He's a loner. I think, and it's funny because I feel like they use the term gunslinger as like a knight, and in terms of probably the most like righteous of the realm at one point, but to see how far he's come and fallen, I guess, and the world has fallen is interesting. The way that they talk about gunslingers. It's like with this like respect, this crazy respect, and like, oh my God, and maybe not necessarily in this book, but as we go on, and to see like him making these kind of shitty decisions along the way, it's just, I guess it speaks to the state of the world.
What's really strange is that in the and you guys let me know because you read the entire revised edition. In the original edition, when the Man in Black turns the entire town of Tull against Roland, and they just all get kind of crazed, and he's like gunning down women and children left and right. The Man in Black I can't remember who puts someone puts Allie in front of them like as a shield.
Yeah,
and in the original book, she hasn't changed. She hasn't turned on Roland, and she looks at him like, "Please don't kill me," and he does anyway. To get through the rest of
Dan,
them.
it's important because Dan, we kind of tasked Dan with talking about the differences between the original. Or I'm sorry, we tasked Mac with Dan with talking about the
Mac.
Original version. But anytime you've got
right.
something, chime in. But Mac, as we go along, be sure to interject with what might have happened originally, and if you got anything with the Gunslinger specifically, please feel free to chime in as we're going along.
Yeah,
here.
I'll look over that. But Dan's absolutely right. The original just had him gunning them down, just gunning all of them down. So they definitely changed that to kind of make him a little bit more human, I guess.
I do like. We'll talk about Allie, and I think the whole 19 thing is excellent, and I think that the fact that despite his feelings, or however the feelings he had towards her, he knew how devastating that knowledge was, and he just essentially wanted to put her out of her misery as soon as possible.
Yeah,
it works better as opposed to just being like, let me just gun down everybody, even if it's Allie, who's done anything wrong.
I kind of do like that a little bit because it's so. I mean, it's so cold, right? Like he really doesn't have to. He even says he just does. I mean, it makes him so horrible, but I kind of like it. I don't know, but it's
I think that retcon works though when this isn't. I don't want to spoil the Shield, the TV series, The Shield, but this retcon works in terms of like the rest of the narrative for the 6 books to follow. Like it's really tough to really want to hang out with this guy for thousands of pages going at it if he's just going to kill everybody for the hell of it, or not for the hell of it, but just because it's an easy out,
I think it also, if you had that original killing of Allie in there, you're not too surprised at the decision he makes with Jake later on.
That's a good point.
Whereas I feel like now you're like, well, is he really going to do this?
Yeah.
So yeah.
He's a fascinating cat, Roland. I like his relationships, especially with Cuthbert. I'm gonna call him Cuthbert. Is everybody okay with that?
That's fine.
Yeah, I think Cuthbert.
As long as I call Alan Elaine.
I used to call him Elaine too. But he gets a lot more play in later books. I enjoy Roland's, I guess his fight, or what do you want to call it, with Court, his coming of age, is coming into being a gunslinger.
Yeah, the trial.
Despite this guy essentially being a Clint Eastwood knockoff from the Sergio Leone spaghetti westerns, I find him a compelling enough character that at the end of this book, I still wanted to keep reading, And I thought that his anytime he would really break down and let his guard, let his shield down, let his guns down for a little while, I always found those moments compelling. Like a lot of the fireside chats that he would have to steal a was it FDR used to do the fireside chats? I guess it was. Let's get really historical here. Every once in a while, we like to show how smart we are.
Oh boy.
So I think he really works well as a main character and as the one constant throughout this entire book. Essentially, he is on pretty much every single page except for when Jake's telling his stories. Mm-hmm. But does he work well as a main lead character for everybody else here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I find him really compelling. It's he's not quite an anti-hero, right? Like it's not nearly as grim or gruesome or fuck all as you think of an anti-hero being typically. Instead, it's just really stark. Like this, he comes across basically immediately as a person with basically nothing, fueled by exactly one thing, and it just happens to be a strong enough fuel to power him through some really terrible situations.
Which is crazy because as he goes, I mean, right out the gate, his experience, his encounter with Brown and with Jake, that he immediately thinks, is this the Man in Black? You know, is this a trap? Is that, you know, like he just completely untrustworthy of anything that he comes across. And like you said, Allison, he is just one track mind, and you know, everything is just falling away. He has no real trust in anything that like should be like just like a given, you know, like this is just a guy out in the desert. Like, no, like maybe this is actually the Man in Black, like in a disguise, and he's gonna kill me in my sleep. And should I kill him first? And they just like are giving pleasantries, you know, at the time. He's still having all these thoughts right immediately.
Well, and the two people that he in the present day, for lack of a better term, story, the two people that he develops the closest bond with are the two people that he is certain are traps. That a trap was left for him in some way. So whether that's true or not, and it seems pretty clear that it is, this is a person who views like the barest minimum of human affection as being a trap, like a weakness designed to ensnare him and bring him ruin. This is what happens when you care about people. That's so depressing.
Yeah.
Because I can't imagine what his psyche's like. Because, like you said, Alison, he's just got the one-track mind. He's just after the Man in Black. He's got nothing behind him. Yet everything in his way, he's convinced is, or not convinced, but he questions whether or not it's just there to fuck with him. Like, he's allowed no happiness. He's allowed no human relationship because it could all just be this Man in Black, Martin or Walter O'Den, whatever you want to call him, screwing with him or trying to set him on the wrong path.
It's like the keep your enemies close thing.
It's hell on earth. It's like the Twilight Zone episode where the guy keeps winning the lotto and gets all like these beautiful women to be with him at the very end. He's tired of winning all the time, and then of course this guy goes, he's like, yeah, take me to the other place. I don't want to be in heaven anymore. And he goes, what makes you think this is heaven? Ha 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 ha. He was in hell the whole time. Good episode. I really gave it a disservice there by describing it so willy-nilly.
It sounded like you didn't care
Dan,
about it.
great episode, great show. Dan, what do you think about the Gunslinger as like this? As basically the through line of not just the series, but you know this book in particular, and as a compelling lead, a compelling hero, anti or otherwise.
I love him, man. He's a bad boy. He's the baddest of boys, and
Why
no, I
on
love
the
it.
back of my edition, the bad boy himself, Roland Deschain, the last of the Gunslingers.
Well, I think another thing I really love about Roland is that he ties to the environment so well. In later books, we see it more as a fish out of water thing, whereas here it's kind of like he's tied to the desert. The fact that he is starving and his lips are getting chapped and he's just getting baked by the sun, but he doesn't give a shit. It just adds to him being so dogged. So he to me, he's like kind of the perfect guide through this world. And like you guys were saying, through these flashbacks, we really start to see his flaws and his insecurities and how he, no pun intended, jumps the guns on things a little bit too much. For someone who is so patient and so good at trying to separate himself from human feelings, he makes so many rash decisions, and I think that adds some variety to him so it doesn't get too sluggish. You know, it doesn't get too slow. So, hey, man, I'm a Roland fan all the way.
Rolling all the way. I think this is an example also of a man left to his own devices. If he still had Cuthbert around, if he still had his father around, if he still had any of these people around, I highly doubt he would have made half the decisions he makes in this book, you know?
Oh, God.
Oh, absolutely.
Like Doctor Who. He's like
He
the
needs a
doctor.
companion.
He needs a companion to retain his humanity. We've blown it wide open.
Sarah Jane's going to show up in the drawing of the three, and everything's going to be just fine. Dan gets all these references, right, Dan?
Yeah, wait, was that like a fucking robot or something?
Yes, that's right. Sarah Jane the robot.
What are those stone angels? There's like a rock angel on Doctor Who.
Rock Angel.
Oh, Rock Angel, that's
Definitely.
right.
It's the Rock. The
They made a
famous,
great-
famous Doctor Who monsters, the Rock Angel.
They made a great musical with Catherine Zeta-Jones and Tom Cruise called Rock Angel. Check it out.
God. What my Doctor Who knowledge, constant listeners, in case you guys didn't know, the Gerber brothers here, they wrote 2 musicals based on Doctor Who in a way that is, it's not just like a tribute thing. It's, in my opinion, a really smart metafictional take on Doctor Who. And so all my knowledge of Doctor Who comes solely from these 2 musicals. But they're great.
Well, Dan, let me make sure I PayPal you later on for those kind comments.
No, they're great. I love both those shows. I would tell listeners to seek them out, but I don't think there's a way to I don't know, is the soundtrack online or anything like that?
Yeah, we signed a deal with Columbia Records. It was in order for them to take on the new Arcade Fire record. We made sure that we had our master tape sent out as soon as possible. Shots fired. Arcade Fire new album. Mac, Are there any other differences with the Roland character, major differences you'd like to point out that you can think of between the original edition and the 2003 Stephen King wanted to retcon the series edition?
No.
Anything off the top of your head? No?
Well, Roland's father was Stephen Deschain, but in the original was Roland the Elder.
Oh.
I think that's a good change.
Yeah.
I mean, there were a lot of changes, but I feel like the only major change in terms of Roland and his proclivities, I guess, was probably not gunning down Allie for no reason.
just to keep moving, like
exactly.
I can't worry about you.
He's like, well, I've been killing everybody in this town. Might as well just kill everybody. No, I think that's like the major change in terms of anything that really affects his character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then we leave him. He's more or less been talking to the Man in Black at the very end of this, as well as going into a deep sleep. And we find out 10 years passed by the time this book ends. And he's a little older. He's got a little more gray. His hair's thinning out. And again, I just wanted to keep reading at that point when I first read it. And I want to thank, I won't mention her name, but I want to thank her for letting me borrow those 5 books, because I was able to keep reading right when this book ended. Thanks, you from North Carolina. Appreciate it. Yeah, we're going back to North Carolina. No-Ka, as I like to call it. But Ka is a wheel.
Oh God.
Thank you.
No-Ka?
I can go all day. I can go all day with this, everybody.
Yeah.
Before we move on to my good friend, my great friend, the Man in Black, who's really noble, there is also something we need to mention. It's that King introduces sayings and really a new language in this series, and it all starts in the Gunslinger. And we tasked not Arthur of Eld, but Allison of Eld to mention a couple words that she noticed here or there. And there's a couple things that might pop up in future books, but we'll go ahead and bring them up here and talk a little bit about the sayings or the very at the very least, like the definition of what these words mean. Whether or not we figure them out on our own, or whether or not they're literally just broken down in the story itself. Allison, do you have that at the hand?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm guessing if you take the time to listen to a Stephen King podcast in which the episodes are literally hours long, you've probably already spent a lot of time at this particular resource. But StephenKing.com has a great Dark Tower glossary. Mm-hmm. It's divided into low speech and high speech, and it's just really fascinating. So some of these things are defined explicitly, even though in particular things in the high speech often have multiple meanings. So there are some words here that we're just sort of left to figure out on our own. Gunna, for example, at least personally, the first time I read that, I assumed that was some sort of plural for guns. No. That is all of one's possessions that one carries on one's body.
You see, and I thought it just meant weaponry, like just things that have to do with guns and whatnot. When I first read it,
it took me. Yeah, I had to look that up.
Yeah. So, for example, at the moment, my Gunna consists of a can of Diet Coke, an iPhone, my laptop case, my laptop, and a Kesha sweatshirt that says "motherfucking woman" on it. I think that's it.
I confirm that is absolutely an Allison's Gunna.
Also the rest of my clothes. I'm not just wearing a Kesha sweatshirt.
It's very hot in the studio today, everybody.
Justin's Gunna is a page of notes, a glass of water, an iPhone, and a paperback copy, the Simon & Schuster edition.
The sans illustration.
Oh, God.
Max Gunna.
So that's one of the very first ones that we stumble across. Mm-hmm. Another example of something that we just sort of figure out through hearing it repeatedly is threaded stock. So threaded and non-threaded. We come to find out that is referring to mutation. So stock that is in no way mutated, and you get a sense of what the world is based on the way that the people of Tull react to a threaded mule. Mm-hmm. Jilly is used quite often.
Yeah, what the hell is that exactly?
So, StephenKing.com says a concubine or mistress.
Okay, that makes sense.
Some other resources say it could also refer to like a girl cousin. Some of these words also have a basis in our language, right? Like we get to cully or cry off or thank ye or cry your pardon. These are things.
Yeah.
That exist elsewhere, some of them in sort of earlier iterations of the English language, right? But
It's like the Germanic to English, that
yeah,
type.
like
You can
if
find the
you-
words within the words.
so you can find these elsewhere, but they're used more consistently here. And that Jilly would be sort of that category.
Yeah, because later on in the book, I remember they mentioned something. It would be the male equivalent of a Jilly. I forgot what the definition is of that, and that made me think of the whole concubine thing when it came to Jillies from earlier in the book.
I think it's a Caffrey.
A Caffrey.
I find the exact.
Memoirs of a Caffrey.
There are some other really interesting ones too. Oh yeah, so it's listed in the high speech. Interesting, and it is concubine or mistress according to StephenKing.com. But again, could be like a sister or girl cousin. The sense that I get is generally that it's a woman being led by a man to whom she is in some way subservient, or when he is in some way responsible for her. We've got some other good ones here. You've heard us say long days and pleasant nights many times. That is obviously a traditional greeting of farewell or phrase of farewell, followed by may you have twice the number. We've got glamour, which is spelled differently here, but used frequently throughout fantasy, particularly often when we're talking about fairies. Glamour is something that fairies do, but that is magic.
And those are done in this, especially when he's trying to put Jake to sleep. He uses his glamour on him, and I remember that being used in the book. Yeah.
Hauken. That's Hauken.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the bullet.
Yeah. Oh, with the bullet thing, the bullet
Yeah.
trick with his knuckles. Yeah, that's a good trick. Yeah.
The touch here is used to mean a mix of empathy and telepathy. That's a really good one. Char is death. That is the base for lots of other words. So if you see a word in the high speech that has char in it, it's somehow death related, but that is the base.
This is great to know because Char is used quite a lot in future books. This is good to know. This is good to know.
Then we have Ka, and Ka is what?
Well, Ka's a wheel.
I thought Ka was the snake from the Jungle Book.
That's what
really?
It's a two A's.
Real
Two
good,
A's,
Dan.
Dan. Get it together, Dan. Two A's.
At the end of this podcast, Dan's actually going to sing that song for us.
Oh, God. I would pay.
Oh, trust
money.
me, or whatever the song's called.
Yeah.
Then we also have Tet. I don't actually know if Tet is used in this book.
I think it's used near the end. I think when he's talking about Cuthbert and Elaine, I think he does use Katet briefly.
I know he
might be
uses.
wrong.
I know he says tete-a-tete, and
Yeah.
Yeah, but then it's spelled differently because
Yeah.
that's
T-E-T-E, right? Yeah.
It's- it's hard for me because when doing all this research and looking at the things that were changed, it mentions when talking about Cuthbert and Elaine, it mentions them as being part of his quartet a lot, and I don't know if they actually mention it in the book. Dan, do you remember?
I don't think they do actually. Because I'm trying to think. They definitely mentioned Ka. Let me flip through real quick to see if they.
I don't think
you guys
they
keep
do.
talking.
This was the because so much of particularly Ka and Tet and Katet have so permeated pop culture that it's hard to not know what those mean. So I do not. Ka is obviously used in the book.
Yes.
I do not know that Tet is, and I'm pretty sure that Katet is not. But I could be wrong.
Also, it's weird too because Elaine is not mentioned in the older version. It's someone named Jamie, and it's like Jamie and Cuthbert. So I feel like
I apologize. Yeah, Jamie's mentioned. Jamie's mentioned in future books too, but he's.
Oh, he is. Okay, yeah. Because I was just wondering if if King had solidified the idea of a quartet so far. I can't remember what book they formally introduced that in. Maybe it's The Wastelands. I can't remember.
There's definitely a discussion that happens where he literally defines what a quartet is in either Drawing of the Three, or I'm pretty sure it's Wastelands once everybody's there.
Yeah.
So there are some other things. We've got Chusset, 17, 18, 19. I've Forgotten the Face of My Father, obviously, is a part of sort of gunslinger lingo. In that case, something that you
it's
say
like a credo.
when you are ashamed or apologizing or being chastised in some way. Slow mutants, who I'm sure we will spend some more time talking about in the next section, and a couple of more. But I think that King does a really nice job of introducing the language of the world without hitting you over the head with it. Sometimes you read a really bad fantasy novel and you can tell it's bad because there are 7 words that are just made up on the first page, but you already know what they all mean. A little bit like what did they call the currency in The Running Man?
Oh, was it like new dollars or new bucks or something like that?
New bucks and like old whatever.
It's like in Avatar.
Oh God!
What is it? Avatar Unobtainium.
Unobtainium
is.
Oh God! See,
I think we're celebrating. This is the 10-year anniversary of the last time I watched Avatar, so I really can't recall.
Congratulations!
Can't wait for the next 4.
Darkles and Tinks, which I don't think is in here, and some others. It's tough because there's just so much language that you create.
Yeah.
Some of it's used here. Some of the things that are described have names that we learn later. But I think, as I was saying, he does a really good job of sort of dropping us in the world, teaching us about the world through the language, and then continuing to expand on it.
Yeah, there's nothing like where he'll say something about Ka, and then in parentheses he'll say, and that means, there's none of that going on. It really does let you just, like you said, Allison, just fall into it and figure it out on your own in a lot of ways and just go through with it.
Here's a specific one that does get used, and this is one of the high speech things that has multiple definitions. So Danden, maybe, depending on how you want to pronounce it, is translated, according to StephenKing.com, as, may I open my heart to your command. But it can mean a conversation between people or a leader. But what it literally translates as, may I open my heart to your command. So the next time that, I don't know, your mom is like, "Hun, will you do something for me?" You can say, "Danden." And she'll go, "What?" And then you will change the subject.
Dan, as we're talking to somebody named Dan right now. So Dan, you can tell Susan that too. Dan,
don't you dare tell Susan that. Actually, no, you tell Susan that.
You tell Susan that's fine. Yes, you should tell her that.
You should open your heart to her command.
Valentine's Day is only 3 months away, Dan.
And there's always Sai, so Dan Sai.
Yeah. Thank you, Sai. Sai gets tossed around a lot. I'll say the power of these books also is years later, I will still talk to people using this language.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I imagine it's kind of like the people who have memorized Klingon, which is always fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And just naturally will pull it up in conversation. I'll say thank you, Sai, all the time.
I started saying, you say true, I say thank you.
Oh, yeah. That's another one.
There's also Life for Your Crop, Life for Your Own, the Spark of Dark poem that he does when he's lighting the fire. And yeah, Allison nailed it on the head. These are just random ones. I took note when I was
expressions.
I thought I didn't remember this, but Crispala is the name of like a food or like something, because there's Nazala later on, obviously. But I didn't remember Crispala, so now that's going to be entered into the vocabulary I use on a daily basis.
Crispala.
We might go for some Crispala.
Next time we go to a convenience store, we'll get over there. So, Allison, thanks a lot for looking up all those expressions, words. And again, those are all on StephenKing.com, which is a great resource.
There are some the Dark Tower Wikia is really great and incredibly thorough.
Yeah.
There are some other great resources out there, but the StephenKing.com glossary is incredibly easy to use. And then, that's straight from the horse's mouth.
And you can't dispute it.
The threaded mule's mouth.
The threaded mule, the true thread that is StephenKing.com. Well, let's move back into the characters, and I'll steal a phrase from Dan. This guy is a bad boy.
Oh God!
But he's a real bad boy. He's a bad man. He is the Man in Black / Martin Broadcloak / Walter O'Dim, and I don't know how spoilery we should get here with the Man in Black. Do we want to go all out right now with who the Man in Black is, or do we just leave it alone for right now?
I mean, haven't we already done that?
I feel like we've discussed this. I feel it's a common knowledge at this point.
I don't think it's...
it's a spoiler
because it doesn't necessarily give you any information about other books, and we've already covered the stand.
Yeah. We definitely talked about the connection both in the episode on the stand and in Night Shift.
You're right. Okay, so again... It's Randall Flagg. The Man in Black is Randall Flagg, and it's just trust us on this. It's Randall Flagg. A couple allusions to that. I mean, Brown, who Roland Deschain meets very early on. I think he's the first person he meets. Brown refers to him as the Birdman, and as we know, Flagg, especially in the stand, will transform himself into a bird, spying on people and whatnot. I love this character. I love Flag, and I love the idea of the Man in Black juxtaposed against this sun-drenched desert, and the simple plot of. I just love the simple plot of the Man in Black fly across the desert and the Gunslinger fly. What a great hook, you know.
One of the great first sentences,
Yeah.
I think.
And they somehow still managed to not have that be the first sentence in the Dark Tower movie. It's like all I was asking for. It's just have that be
Was
the
there
fucking
narration?
thing. Somebody says it later. It's not even. It's just. We'll talk about the movie later on in this podcast.
Yeah, I was
we
going to
promise.
say I had some things to say about that, but I will say in the original book.
This is interesting. This is very
there's
compelling
there's a
because
few things-
originally some of these characters were definitely separate and not one and the same.
Yeah.
So, what do you have here, man?
And which is funny because I don't feel like that's exactly mentioned 100%. But like in the original version, the ageless stranger is told to be Merlin, which is a minion of the tower, even more powerful than Walter. But in the revision, they just say it's Legion, and because there's also obviously more references to Walter kind of being Merlin, so they switched that up a bit. Originally, the Man in Black says he's nearly immortal. In the revision, he says that he and Roland are kind of immortal. Another thing, what they changed timeline-wise for Roland was, I think they said something about the fall of Gilead was like having been like 12 years past, and they changed that because they later on say Roland's ancient, and they were like, well, this would suggest he's in his 30s, but really, you know,
time has no
obviously
meaning
time-
at a certain point because
exactly.
time is falling apart. Yeah.
The fate of the Man in Black at the end of the book, it was like he was dead in the original. Like there's no uncertainty, but in the revision, it says that he's not quite sure if those are really his bones or not, or if he's still out
Another
there.
trick. Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting. Yeah, and you're right. They kept Walter and Martin Broadcloak. Those were not necessarily
One and the
maybe the
same.
Man in Black. Yeah, those were different. Obviously, they go into more of that, and then obviously, and Flag. I think they mention in like Wizard of Glass. They don't.
That's
mention that
later
at all in
on.
this book.
That's
But because we've already covered the Stand and we talked about that connection, we're not really spoiling anything that you wouldn't already know.
exactly.
I have a question
Yes.
for all three of you. When I first read this, about which my memories are very foggy, I would absolutely not have made this connection. Like, it's not something I would have realized. I hadn't read The Stand, so I just never would have. And now, of course, I already knew that.
Yeah.
Right? What is it like to read this book and make that discovery? Or to read The Stand and make that discovery, depending on which order you read
Well,
them.
I read The Stand first, and I knew when I started to realize that there was a greater Stephen King universe is when I found out from people that The Man in Black and Flag was one and the same. So when the reveal is eventually made in later books, we won't spoil that too much. But reading it, knowing that, Allison, there's so much just in the expressions and the laughter and the way that he goes about his business that for me it's, oh, of course this is Randall Flagg. You know, it makes total sense, especially that last conversation between him and Roland where he's very mocking and makes inappropriate jokes every now and then to try to lighten the mood, even though this is the darkest place you could possibly be in. Very much like Randall Flagg.
I love that conversation because he really he makes so many comments and says so many things, and he's like, oh, I don't know, and he doesn't even know why he's saying some of these things. It just, he comes off so much more as like a pawn, and that he's not actually really in control, and he's not the big bad. That I think people forget that as the
Especially
books
in
go
this,
on. But I think it's important to remember that he's not like. He's not he's a henchman. He's a Boba Fett that actually shows up and they do something with it in the books, you know, and that's why everybody loves him. But he even he refers to himself as Death. You know, it's weird because the Oracle says that Martin is no more. The Man in Black has eaten his soul. So it's like, all right, did he just possess this character?
Well, I think he's just
at one
becoming.
point?
He's coming to because at one point, the Man in Black actually says something like, "You know, Roland, I could have taken on a more familiar face, but I've opted to show you my true self," which is, I guess, what the Man in Black is. You know?
Right, and then I think also another interesting thing is the Man in Black. Or the Gunslinger kind of posits that maybe the Man in Black buries his shit. He calls it dung. And I think that's interesting because I think that's like kind of a first hint that maybe the Man in Black isn't human at all. Maybe he doesn't shit. Maybe, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's no trace of this person. He's just, you know, fleeing across the desert, and he can't find any like human remnants of him, except for maybe like a fire every once in a while. So that's kind of an interesting thing.
We've been talking a lot about Walter O'Dim. Let's go to Walter O'Dan. Dan, I've been waiting like an hour to say that joke. Hey, what do you think about the Man in Black, Walter and Martin?
Yeah, so it's real interesting in the older book, as Max said. They make them these separate beings, and reading the original version, that kind of takes away from a little bit of his power at the end. Like he even says, "Oh, there's me, and then there's a beast that guards the tower who is above me," and it's sort of combining that with like the big bad who we'll meet later on, whose name I won't say. So towards the end, that last section where Roland is talking with the Man in Black, he sort of fell off a little bit for me. However, knowing what I know about him through the rest of the series, and just as an ominous villain in general, I'm really drawn to him. It's Allison's question about knowing who he is going into this. I could be wrong, but don't they, in the Wastelands, I think they drop other hints towards the Stand before they do the reveal, right? Like
they do. Yeah, they do.
So you sort of like you start to get the idea that there are these connections already. So when the reveal does happen, it's I don't know, it's very much earned. I think like it doesn't feel like he did it just to do it. Some of the things I just like about his character in this book, how they describe him physically is, man, there's a part where they talk about his voice rattling like a handful of bones or something like that. They give him like this really distinct vocal quality, and I love how they describe his robes. And I feel like he really takes Randall Flagg and goes, okay, what would Randall Flagg be like in a pure fantasy setting? And he really runs with that. So that makes it fresh to me too. In a weird way, I kind of prefer that to later on where we see him more in his Randall Flagg persona. I kind of like him as a full-on sorcerer. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. To answer Allison's question, when I first read the book, I'm pretty sure Justin had already told me it was Flagg, and I think that was one of the draws to the book. I was like,
you gotta read this.
This is really, this is really interesting. And maybe you told me after, but I'm pretty sure I had that idea, and I probably had already seen the Stand miniseries had already been on, so I'd seen that. I had not read the book obviously until recently, but so that was definitely like a draw to the series and to the Dark Tower in general. Just knowing that it was going to be possibly a connective tissue to the Stephen King universe.
And we talk a lot about these revisions, which were made before King went into those final couple books. He really wanted to make sure that everything truly tied together and made sense. I'm usually very much against, retconning and rebooting and whatnot, but I think it really does work well here. I think that the writing is better, first of all, and even in this in the prologue to the revised edition, King even knocks on his own prose that he was, the way he was writing when he was in his early 20s and early, I guess, mid 20s when he was writing those. So it works here for me.
Yeah.
I like it.
Well, and it does get a little at the end, to King's comment, when they're having that conversation, it does get a little bit existentialism 101, like the stuff they're saying is a little like,
the universe and everything else. Like, here we go.
But the other thing too is I love that in the Gunslinger, Flagg/Walter Dim / Man Black gets to show his powers in a really neat way when he resurrects the Weed Eater, and that causes this whole town to turn against Roland. You just get to see his powers a little bit more tangibly in something like The Stand. And so I think just as a commentary on his abilities and on how ageless he is, that it really plays in nicely. Once again, working through this fantasy framework, like the things he does here are much more like what a wizard would do as opposed to just the Dark Man that we see in other books.
I think he just fits into that atmosphere because, people are aware of magic and wizardry in this world, whereas in order to fit in The Stand, he can't just walk around
exactly,
in groups of people and just start, making things happen until the world is truly destroyed at that point in The Stand.
It's also funny because that was something when reading The Stand, when he's like doing his magic and things, that I felt didn't quite fit, and I didn't really love that part of The Stand.
Yeah.
But if you read The Stand after you read this, and you know that it is that character, that stuff makes way more sense, and I'm much more allowing of it to be in that regular world, I guess. I also think it's really interesting to note that on page 139 of the Nal edition that I had,
Nal?
he yells out, NAL. That's all it says. I don't know if that's short for something, but
National American Library.
He does yell, "Let there be light," and I
we
just think it's interesting that he's a big Saucer Full of Secrets
I
fan.
I
and
know
loves
it.
Pink Floyd.
That's a Room 237
and,
reference, for God's sake.
Yeah, I know. So hopefully we'll get a little let there be more light on this when Mike or Dan, you get to the editing portion of this.
It'll be a good intro. Hint. Yeah, the Man in Black's a real bad guy. What can I tell you? He also gives a very, very, very. Dan was talking about all the existential universe talk that happens for pages upon pages at the end of this book, but he does give up this very, very important bit of information to Roland and to the readers. He says, "Suppose that all worlds, all universe met in a single nexus, a single pylon, a tower, and within that a stairway, perhaps rising to the Godhead itself." So he kind of just sets upon why is Roland so determined to get to this tower, or why does he make it his true mission to want to find this tower, and really drives home the point that the worlds and time, everything's just falling apart, and this is why he's so determined to sacrifice, men, women, and children in order to get to this tower, to find this tower, and to stop the world from collapsing. We'll talk about the climax of the whole thing later on. But yeah, the Man in Black is an incredible villain. He makes his presence known throughout a lot of King books, whether it's blatantly obvious or just kind of alluded to. We'll talk about him a little bit more as we talk about other characters. Let's go in the order of people we meet. So before we get to Jake, who is technically, I guess, the third or if not the second most important character, let's talk about Allie, who he meets at Tull. Allison, Allison, do you want to leave this one off?
Oh, wow. Yeah, when I reached this part in the book and got to the, oh, well, she once was lovely, but now not anymore, I just wanted to punch myself in the face. Thinking about first of all, how often King uses that particular description to describe women who are not in their 20s.
But she's scarred too, though. Didn't she have a big scar on her face too, though? So there's a
little
little bit of a. This isn't quite Running Man.
But yes, absolutely, it's not the Running Man, and that's what I think is really important, because after that first knee-jerk reaction, that's just not a problem anymore. She's an incredibly well thought out character. I think treated with great compassion, but not painted with some sort of broad brush. Mm-hmm. I think that her scenes with Roland are really beautifully written. And the idea that we can be condemned by our own curiosity, by whatever you do, don't think about elephants, is really terrifying. And I think those brief chapters in Tull, or segments in Tull, are really all you need to get a full portrait of this incredibly lonely woman who still finds a way to be kind to others. Yeah. And I think particular to Sheb, the scene where Sheb comes running in with the knife, the way that she reacts to that, I think is really great. I don't know. She was one of my favorite characters in the book, easily.
I think the wit about her is also pretty great. Mm-hmm. And Roland, as we know, is a very dry character. One of my favorite exchanges is after telling a gruesome story about Nort's death and resurrection, the gunslinger says, "A nice story." And without missing a beat, Allie goes, "Oh, yes, thank you, Si. This be a nice place." like we got it, you asshole. I love when Roland just keeps pressing for more information about the Man in Black. And Allie says, "You have to have it, don't you? You couldn't just throw me a fuck and go to sleep." It just switches your stereotypical sexes on its head, where she's just like, "Come on, can we just screw around a little bit? Like, why do you have to get so serious?" I love Allie a lot in this book, and she's obviously just in the Tull chapter before she meets her fate. I do want to talk a lot about that letter and the number 19 and how we would all deal with that. But Dan, what do you think about Allie before we get to that?
I love Allie. I feel like I know I'm starting off like everything. I love this character. They're great, but I don't think they're I don't think there are any duds in the Gunslinger. And like Allison said, I think it says a lot about King at this point in his career that he includes a female character that, yes, she can, be sexual, but without that just defining her. And he doesn't, and we've talked a lot about how he portrays women in some of the earlier books, and sometimes he does it great, but I think he does struggle a little bit with strong character development sometimes. And I think I kind of attribute, I guess, to his knack for Western dialogue. Like, I feel like every scene between Roland and Allie is almost just kind of a masterclass in very short, gritty, but
Very
crisp
punchy.
scene work. Yeah, exactly. And he sort of turns that Western archetype of the female brothel owner or bartender, whatever it is, on its head a little bit. How do you guys feel about? We touched on her death a little bit already, but how do you guys like that as a story move, just in general, like taking this character who we really love and then just kind of brutally killing her? I mean, we obviously get a lot of other strong women characters later on, but I was just curious if you like wish Allie had stuck around a little bit longer.
I think Allison kind of alluded to it earlier, is that, she's a very strong woman, but this thing, it's the elephant thing. It's like this very thing. It's no matter who you are and how tough you are, guy. Like let's bring it up now with the whole 19th thing. Like, how long would you be able to last? It's like the shiny red button. Do not press the shiny red button that's right in front of you, or the world will end. If it's just right there, if it's always present, it's even more tough because you have this word that's just inside of your head. And if you say it, nothing good's gonna come of it. But like, how long can you possibly last? How long could you, Allison? How long could you last? Mac, Dan, how long could you last before saying that word 19? Even if you were by yourself, like, how long?
Personally, I just don't want any information about what happens after we die, because I'm pretty sure it's nothing personally. So it just it's not a thing I spend a lot of time thinking about. So if someone said to me, you can know what happens after this, it will drive you mad. But all you have to do is say one specific word to the most terrifying human being you know. I would go, okay, great. I really don't ever have to talk to that guy again. He came back from the dead, and now he freaks me the hell out. This is really very easy. Not only will I never say 19 to him, I just will probably not talk to him anymore.
Like, I don't want to talk to the zombie that's in our bar anymore. Just stay away from me.
It would be more likely that somebody would be like, oh, wait, what day of the month is it? And I would accidentally say, oh, it's the 19th in front of him. That's how it would happen for me. That's the only way it would happen.
Well, that would be my fear.
And that's why it's so scary to me when I first read this, because Allie is kind of like a stronger character. The fact that she crumbles so quickly and goes and says the word to him, I think there's more of a magical sickness to the letter and to putting the thought in her head than we're giving the character credit for, in the sense that I don't think that she's quite in control of her faculties. I think it's just she's almost infected with the word. It's like a Pontypool, or even the language. As soon as you hear the word, she's infected with it, and she's not in control of how long. It's just a matter of time.
Well, I think that's a great interpretation, and you're absolutely right. So yes, if I had a magical 19 sickness, I would probably also say 19. But
you're saying it over and over again, Allison.
She also knows he's leaving, and she knows that there's something very wrong in the town, not just because of the letter, but because everything that's going on with Sylvia. Is that her name?
Sylvia Pitson, yeah.
Yeah. And this dead man come back to life, and she knows the world is not right. There's something not right. So it seemed to me a little bit like maybe she just knew that was it, and so she may as well just say 19 and get it over with.
Yeah, that's a good point too. And then both good points all. And Dan, you asked the question. What do you think?
I mean, I would like to think I would be strong enough to hold out for a long time, but I think a lot about what happens after we die, and if anything happens after we die. So I think I would be a goner. I would be a sucker and say it.
Well, and the thing is, the Man in Black is very manipulative. If you just even reading the letter that he writes, I'll read it real quick. It says, "You want to know about death? I left him a word. That word is 19. If you say it to him, his mind will be opened. He will tell you what lies beyond. He will tell you what he saw. The word is 19. Knowing will drive you mad, but sooner or later you will ask. You won't be able to help yourself. Have a nice day, Walter O'Donnell. P.S. The word is 19. You will try to forget, but sooner or later it will come out of you like vomit. 19. And he keeps capitalizing 19. He's got smiley faces. He knows what he's doing. He knows he's setting her up for a disaster.
He's a trickster, and I like tricks, so I think I would succumb to those tricks pretty soon.
I don't know how long. It wouldn't be good.
Yeah.
I'll put it this way: if you told me that all I would have to say is 19, and I would find out, what happens to you after you die, it would be a very sad life for me. It would be a shorter life.
What's hard too is that it's not necessarily something you say every day, but you're counting something, or it could come up randomly, an address. I don't know about an address and toll, but like you might say the words 19 at some point, and then you're screwed, even if you forget about it.
You know what doesn't help though is doing a Stephen King podcast, especially when we're doing all the connections. And 19 comes up quite a lot.
I know we've all gone insane a long time ago. Then
that's
if
right.
The case.
Almost a year now. Can you believe it? But Allie, again, she meets her end right at the onset of the Battle of Tull, and she says 19.
Wait, guys,
And
can I tell you something?
Yeah.
No joke. So I'm on my computer obviously for this podcast. My email is up. Guess how many unread messages are in my inbox at this moment?
Oh my God!
I'm gonna take a screenshot of it and I'll send it.
I don't want to say it.
I don't want to say it either.
I'm trying to be strong.
Yeah, I know.
But what happens
I
after we die,
I
Dan?
just realized it. Let's see, a little screenshot right here. There's 19.
Wow.
I think. What can I say? I remember a few weeks ago, or when I first got to school here, I wanted to look at some Stephen King archival materials in the on-campus research center, and the locker number they gave me, you're not allowed to bring your stuff in there. The locker number they gave me was 19 also. So, cause the wheel.
Yeah, Dan,
It
you were
was
gonna
really nice
you're
knowing you,
screwed.
Dan.
It's great to catch up.
Yeah. You hear Hank just like rip my throat out right now.
Just you'll think you're perfectly fine. You let him in, he just leaps upon you, and just goes at you.
Oh God.
But sadly, Allie meets her end, and it's a sudden end. But again, I think it speaks to the power of that word and how Roland knows that she is better off being dead than having to live in existence with that word in her. And I think the revised version again works a lot better for that character.
Yeah.
I think we are all in the same.
Yeah, I would agree. I really do. I think the revisions in general. I think all of them make the book stronger, especially the Flag, Walter, Man in Black stuff at the end.
Yeah, we all agree on that. Let's move on a little bit here. Let's talk briefly about Sylvia Pittston. She's not in a lot of it, but she definitely has some very key roles. She's the evil preacher who, I guess, is impregnated by the Man in Black, right? Is that what they're trying to say? Or is it Man in Black, or is it supposed to be the Crimson? I'm not gonna say that.
I think it's alluded to that it's probably the Man in Black.
The Man in Black, right?
And the way Roland treats her is a little unsavory.
Well, yeah, because she's pregnant with the demon baby, who's kind of like the version of Damien, I guess, who's going to be like the devil child. Who's
like the Antichrist.
Yeah, the Antichrist essentially. So I'm confused with how he performs this abortion. I guess.
Me too. Yeah.
Because he uses the gun barrel on her, right?
Yeah.
And I guess he presses up against something that would cause. It's like a Western way of birth control. I don't know how this works.
Allison,
They're all looking at me like I have an idea.
Allison, you're familiar with
about-
the gun barrel abortion, right?
Like how they use like.
But I've read this a few times. I still can't.
In abortions and poorly, they would use like the coat hanger to like induce like a.
Maybe that's
I think he just used his gun barrel in a way that was
It's just the most gruesome and frankly kind of on the nose thing that King could think of, so he just went for it.
Yeah.
I'm sure that if a woman who was pregnant had a large gun shoved into her person, that it is possible that could cause a miscarriage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But there are probably more effective ways of causing an abortion.
I mean, those sandalwood pistols are magic, so maybe there's some magic at work there.
Use the glamour on those guns, or not the gunna, but the guns themselves.
I mean, in fiction, there have been all kinds of ways that people have, usually men have forced women to lose children. From like punching them repeatedly in the stomach to pushing them down the stairs. This, however, takes the cake. It really does. I'm not a medical authority, and while I have those body parts, I've never been pregnant or had a gun shoved up in my business. So
That's right.
can't speak to the effectiveness of the technique, but it sure is upsetting.
And you heard it here first, folks. Allison has never had a gun.
Yeah,
So.
nobody has ever put a gun up my whatsits.
So there we go. Because it's not even that. Again, I've read this a few times, and they allude to a gun being inserted there, but it doesn't get very graphic after that, which I kind of appreciate.
I
I'm
do
like,
too.
we're good. Okay, you performed the abortion. Congratulations. Let's move on with this.
It's
Do you guys get that? I was wondering, maybe it's in the original edition. I was actually wondering if it was implying whether she was actually pregnant with the demon or if the man black just made her think that. Because it is so impressionistically described. I was wondering, like, does she actually have a demon up there, or is
I think she does. I think she's pregnant. I do. I think, there's something about that, and it's just kind of not referred to after that. I feel like that she was indeed pregnant.
Yeah.
And she's
Well, and I think that either option is a valid interpretation, and that's really cool.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it doesn't matter whether or not there actually is, because if there is, then he's found a way to destroy it. But even if there wasn't, it was still causing the same response in her and in the people that she preached to. So whether it is a delusion or a reality doesn't really make a difference, because it was the end result was going to be the same.
Yeah, that's the thing. Do you think that the Battle of Tull that took place was inevitable? Because do you think that was? I can't see. Here's the thing. I can't remember if does he see her sermon first before he encounters her one-on-one? Is that right? Or does he encounter her one-on-one and then the sermon happens?
It's the sermon and then he sees her.
Okay, so it's inevitable then that she is going to convince this town to kill him no matter what, basically.
Mm-hmm. And
that's the big trap that ends up being the trap that the Man in Black left behind, is having this very persuasive woman suggest through her Christian teachings or whatever that this is the bad guy that we have to go after.
It's also interesting too, because when I first read this, I didn't pick up on that. When I was a kid, I read when Allie comes out with having heard 19, I thought that was the trigger for like the town. Like once she knew it, everybody, like, I don't know if she would just said it or told people, and it just spread like wildfire, and then they just went to attack him. Now, reading it, obviously that's not the case, but it also happens right around the same time. Like all that stuff just happens immediately. So I think that's probably why I got confused.
I think it's just using the religious hysteria to his advantage.
Yeah,
you know?
And the description of Sylvia Pitson, I cannot find for the life of me because I don't have my book in front of me. But on page 49 of the Nall edition, if you read that description, it's pretty disgusting.
I mean, she's a giant, right? She's supposed to be like this giant woman kind of thing.
Yeah, and I know she's very like. Men are still, it's like a lust kind of thing going on there. They keep mentioning lust, right? When it comes to Sylvia.
The description is of an obese woman with beautiful skin, who has some sort of sexual pull.
Yeah.
As demon women are wont to do.
Yeah, that's right.
Wait,
I think it's also the whole thing with preachers too. There's always like this kind of, with religious fervor, like the lust you have for the person doing the sermon and that type of thing too. I'm sure that plays a little bit of it, and maybe the translucent skin too. I don't know.
It's almost like the real horror was human nature all along.
Religion.
We're the Walking Dead.
Where's Rick? Rick to give us that speech in the forest.
I feel like the I guess gun whatever with her is the first sign in a huge trend in the Dark Tower series that you'll see in, I feel like, almost every book. It happens twice in this book. With Roland using sexual means to like kill a demon. I mean, you see, not a demon, but a supernatural force. You see it later with the Oracle. It's like, oh, you have to, or is it the Oracle or the succubus thing? You have to like fuck this thing to.
It's the Oracle. I called it the Oracle, right? The succubus.
Yeah, the same thing, right? And the Oracle Mountains, and then you'll see later on, and I think it's Wastelands. There's like a super graphic thing where like Roland has to fuck something to defeat it. It's just interesting. Like King really he gets his pound cake quite a bit when it comes to Roland using a different both guns. If you get my drift.
3 guns.
Something that also, sorry, just to backtrack here for a second. In the changes in the revised version, it cites the note that is given by Walter to Allie about 19, but I remember that being in the original version. So that's interesting. If the 19 note is not in the original version.
No. Wow.
Which
Well, it makes
is
sense because
crazy.
she hasn't mentioned 19
I know,
in the
and
original
he
version.
just guns her down just to gun her down, like, you know what I mean. So, but I think that's such a crucial, great bit
Yeah.
to put in this book.
And something else that drives home that this is probably Flagg is in that note, there are smiley faces. And Flagg uses those smiley faces a lot as pins on his jacket and like the stand and whatnot. So I love that addition. I think that the note and the outcome from that note is a nice little piece there of storytelling. So yeah, that's Sylvia, and she's the cause of the battle. She gets the entire town, all the women and children, to go after Roland and try to kill him, which I think would make a great a screen adaptation. But of course, why use that in a film, right? God forbid they use that sequence in the Gunslinger story, but that's fine.
I can't wait to hear how much you loved this movie.
It's good. I love it so much. Can't wait to talk about it for the 15th time somehow. So let's move on. Let's move on now to we'll talk about Nort in the cemetery, if that's okay with everybody, because I think that's definitely a cemetery section. Let's talk about. He's not a bad boy, but he is a boy. He's a good boy, and his name.
Boy.
He's a good boy. Good boy, and his name is Jake. We meet Jake. Initial impressions on Jake and how strange his story is from beginning to end.
Love Jake.
Yeah,
little Jakey. I think in the original book he was like age 9, and I think they bumped it up to like 12 or something.
I think he's 11 or something.
But I love when we first are introduced to him. I love like his outlook on the world, how hazy everything is at the way station. I love how he describes telling time by how many poops he's had.
As we all do.
Which is just great. I don't know. It's just a silly thing. But his relationship with the Gunslinger is just super instrumental. And I think, again, when I was reading this, I was around that age. So I was like easily just inserting myself into that role. And which is exciting. I think I like the fact that you have that age range there, because as someone young coming in reading fantasy, it was really easy to just at least get on board with him, because I feel like a lot of the interactions the Gunslinger has with Allie, etc., probably went way over my head when I was really young, and I just didn't. I was like, I don't know, why is he just he doesn't even know this girl? Why is he sleeping with her?
They're not even married.
But but yeah, no, Jake, he's a complicated guy.
Well, I think the other thing that really tied me in is the fact that he's definitely from our world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that is nuts. I mean, he just starts talking about Zorro, I think, right out the gate, and or I love how he what's that story that Roland tells about the man who's like raping women, he's invisible later on in the book.
I vaguely remember this, and he alludes to something else from
I think Jake says, "Oh, he's invisible," and it's like Roland doesn't know what the word invisible means. Right. It's like it's just such a weird disconnect.
But I love the basic thing. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, just the fact that Jake has the touch, which we also kind of adhere to the shine.
Yeah, exactly. That's something I had for my King's Dominion later on. That might be the only real King's Dominion I have, actually. So
I actually have only one other thing for that, but I didn't even think about that.
The two crucial things with Jake here. One is you see the father-son relationship developing between Roland and him throughout the entire book, which is fascinating when you put that against the fact that both Roland and Jake are kind of convinced that Jake is going to die and Roland's going to either let him do it or kill him himself. And that goes on throughout the book. That's an interesting thread to have there. It's kind of like the fighting against fate aspect to the book that I like a lot. Dan, what are your feelings about Jake the character in The Gunslinger? Let's try to keep it, we'll talk about The Gunslinger.
Just Jake in general?
Yeah.
Yeah, I always use this phrase when we talk about King's kid characters, but I think he's good at it. It's another resourceful young boy. You guys brought up Danny already. In reading, much darker, of course. But I'm going through different seasons right now, and the kid in that is also resourceful, but in a much darker way. It makes it all the more heartbreaking that Jake is so aware of what's going to happen to him early on, and that Roland, in a way, he's wiser than Roland in that regard, right? Because Roland keeps telling himself he's not going to do that, and he keeps sort of repressing this prophecy that he knows he has to sacrifice Jake in the mountains to find the man black and ultimately the tower.
And Jake's very forthcoming with that. He keeps bringing it up, like, you're going to kill me, aren't you? And he keeps repeating it, and Roland's the one that keeps putting it back.
It made me think about just, as a kid, you want to think that every adult knows what they're doing and that they're totally cool people and that they have your best interest in heart. And now that I'm an adult, I realize that, I'm just as messed up as anyone else, right? Like we're all human, we all have flaws, and I think
that might be the greatest fantasy of all.
Yeah, no, seriously. I mean, you think your teachers and these people in authority, these caretakers, that they have everything figured out when you're a kid, and they really don't. And that's what makes this whole thing really sad with them, is that Jake and Roland both help each other out in terms of healing each other throughout this journey, and you think they're going to be this symbiotic pair, and then Roland proves that that's not the case. And we'll see some more from Jake later on, but it still doesn't make it any less tragic, because whatever happens down the line, their relationship is predicated on the fact that Roland let him die. What do you guys think about, because I know it's one of the most famous lines from the novel, but it did seem like it was going a little too far with Jake's wisdom, is the go, there are other worlds than these. That just seemed like this moment. I'm like, I don't know, even a kid as smart as Jake, would he say that? Or was it supposed to be some other kind of force?
I think I was okay with it, because as the book went along, he had started to kind of adapt the Gunslinger's language and
that's a good point.
And sayings and limericks and whatnot. So if he had just been acting like hey, whoa, I'm 12 years old the entire time, and then all of a sudden dropped that line, it would have felt a little more, I don't know, unbelievable.
Yeah, I think earlier on, when Roland grabs the jawbone, he mentions that the only way to hear like a real prophecy is from a corpse. And so I kind of like the last thing that he says is actually like really prophetic, and
it's coming from like essentially a corpse at that point.
Yeah, essentially he is dead.
Yeah.
At that point, he's going to die, and then I think he's kind of like out of body. I just it's like signs.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's a good callback.
I just want to say, gee whiz, Roland, there are other worlds than these.
Hey man, he's like, good luck, thanks for everything. Allison,
as he falls.
Allison, you read this for the first time. I guess you said you were like 11 or 12, so you're around Jake's age, and now you're reading it again. What do you think about the character of Jake and his ties to our world and how he ties into the mid-world, I guess you could say?
I really like the way that King manages to make Jake both very childlike, familiarly childlike, particularly the poops and some of the worshipful stares that Roland catches him, Jake giving him, and then sometimes oddly adult, like very aware of the risks, very aware of the fact that there is something in his head that's not right, and he doesn't want to know what it is, but he's aware that must mean that it's bad. Like, he seems to have a lot of insight into human beings in general.
Yeah.
But all filtered through not necessarily kid voice, like, whoa, hey, we're all gonna die eventually. But through a prism of innocence that's sort of slowly being battered away by all of the terrible things that have happened to him in his life.
Yeah, I think
I'm a Jake fan.
Yeah, no, me too. I think it's interesting because in the past, King's children, we've always given them shit for 1 minute being like doo daddy,
I'm 5 years
and then
old,
all of a sudden
I'm
they're
15.
like talking like they're 45 years old. This works in this book. It works because of what Jake's gone through, and obviously, I don't want to spoil anything, but there's a reason for that.
And the other thing about Jake is we learn in this book that he's kind of grown up by himself. His mother's absent. His father's also very absent. I guess he has a maid that he kind of more or less grew up with.
A very professional maid.
Very professional. Very, very good maid. Better than his mother and father. So I feel like there's a lot of that questioning of adults at that point in his life, even before he gets crushed by a car. He's kind of already an independent kid in a lot of ways,
Here's what I want to know. If Mrs. Shaw is so professional that she cuts all the sandwiches like they're finger sandwiches for a tea party, and she's very distant and removed, then why the hell does she call him Bama?
Oh.
Like, where does that nickname come from? Do we find out later where that nickname comes from?
I think we'll discuss that in the future.
Okay.
Because I think there's a reason for that.
There's a big discrepancy between this very professional caregiver who
Yeah.
keeps him at this emotional distance that then teaches him to treat other people with emotional distance, and someone who would give him the nickname
Bama. Yeah. I think it has to do with, don't quote me on this, folks. I think it has to do something with Alabama, the college, Alabama, and the football team. I think we learned that later on. Dan, am I remembering any of this correctly?
I can't remember if they reference anything football related later on. I just know when I hear Bama, I once read an actor's bio or a director's bio that was saying, this guy, he has been in this production, but his favorite production is his newborn son, Bama. his name was Bama. That's the always I think of. But
I want you to know, I typed in, why does Jake Chambers get called Bama into Google? And the suggested Google search was, why does Jackie Chan hate his son? Anyway.
Jackie Chan plays a major role in Song of Susanna, actually, so good to see him get brought up so early. King had planned it all along. Those Google algorithms are really good. What can I say? Alabama, one of our favorite states. We want to make that abundantly clear on this podcast. They're really moving along quite nicely. How shocked were we about that death? Reading this the first time.
Can we save it for the cemetery?
Oh yeah, definitely. Sure. We'll save it
Is
for the
this a
cemetery.
good time to transition to the cemetery? Do we have other characters we should talk about?
I do want to talk about one more character. I want to talk about the lovable, the tough but fair Court. Who plays a major role in not only this book, but he's kind of the conscious through the future Gunslinger
I always
tales.
pictured Michael Rooker playing Court.
I like it.
Oh yeah, that's great. Yeah,
that's a good one.
Yeah. Again, this is probably the most interesting part of the book for me was going back and especially after we get a little bit more history of Roland in future books. Going back and really spending time with Court and their road to becoming gunslingers. Court's just I feel like Court is like, to me, it's like Doc. It's like Dr. Lanier, Justin. He's who is
Dr. Lanier's our old chorus teacher back in high school.
Yeah, who's just like this hard as nails. Like, he was so serious about it. You wanted to, you hated him at first, and then you wanted to impress him, and then you were like, I don't know. It's this very strange relationship that I think really forced us to grow up in ways that we might not have if we didn't have that kind of a teacher.
I would agree 100% on that. Alice, what do you think about Court?
Well, what a charmer, right?
Yeah.
So I in revisiting this, as I was reading it, thought, oh, I like this guy. And then it was nothing but him abusing children for like a while. I was like, why did I like this guy? And then when you get to that incredible sequence when Roland is taking his test or testing the line, crossing the line, holding the line, what do they say about the stinking line? You get to see all of this nuance. And yes, we should not hit children in the face repeatedly and give them concussions. Obviously.
Cheap shots. A lot of those are cheap shots too, because he would just show up and punch Cuthbert in the face.
But you can see that this is both what this person has been trained and asked to do for these boys, and that he cares about them and is invested in their well-being and what will happen to them for the rest of their lives. So I find that final sequence, which is really the only sequence where you get to know who he is as a person, to be one of the most compelling in the book.
Yeah, it's the part else. I think it's when he gets challenged and he says, "I recognize your command and bow to it now, if never again, with all my heart." So, and he kind of gives that little bow to Roland, even though deep down he thinks that Roland's jumping ahead a little too much.
Yeah,
he should be waiting up.
It's a waste.
Yeah.
Of skill and of life, and I think it's
because
really
what happens here is if Court wins, Roland is screwed. Roland's exiled.
Yeah,
and this is the son of Stephen Deshane, who's like the head of everything over here. He's
well, and he also there's a reference to after he's lost when he's willing himself to not go into a coma just to talk to this kid for a little bit longer. A+. He says that he can tell that his need must have been great because he wouldn't have done it otherwise. So there's also some insight into what is obviously a young person's tremendous pain.
Yes.
And it's I just think it's really well done, and I'm looking forward to finding out more about more about Michael Rooker.
Rook, we'll call him Rook from now on, instead of Court.
And that's true for the boys as well. And they were fun. I mean, Bert, Cuthbert, Cuthbert,
Cuthbert.
The
Depends on who's doing the audiobooks, you know.
Right. Yeah. He's obviously the kid that we get to know the best in this book, but I'm interested to spend more time with all of them.
Well, that goes for a lot of the characters in this book. A lot of these people, we don't spend a lot of time with them. We don't spend a lot of time with Court or Cuthbert, but they're still well-rounded enough in a way that I always found. I was always interested in going back to hearing more about them, you know, as we went along. Dan, I know you've got that Court tattoo. What do you think about Court?
Hey, what can I say? I love Court. No, Court.
It's of the hawk biting out his eyes.
Yeah, it's really graphic. No, very much like with Roland. I mean, I love that Court is also a dude who, yeah, ultimately I think he has the better good in his mind, but he beats the shit out of kids. There's just a hardness about him. I love that he's fine with getting his face clawed out by a was it Falcon or a hawk? David, he's a hawk, right? David.
Hawk named David.
I love it just shows how unforgiving this world is, that he's, you know, on the ground, his eye hanging out whenever, but he, like you said, he's happy about that happening to him because it means Roland was ready. Well, I don't know. It's debatable whether Roland actually is ready or not because he kind of gets goaded into it by Martin. But yeah, like he's a hard ass, and although Court is not in it much, it's funny because I know we're getting to the end of Zeros and Villains, but I feel like every character makes an impression in this book, from Hax to Court, to the guy with the bird in the beginning, to the weed eater, to all of them. They all, by taking these Western archetypes of the master and student and whatever else, I think King just really makes them memorable. Also, too, I love the way he describes Court's muscles, how his arms are really big, but he has this big pot belly, which also makes me think of Michael Rooker and Mallrats specifically. That's kind of like,
I'm imagining somebody giving him a handshake in Mallrats right now.
The pretzel, like so nasty. But no, I mean, I think he would make a great Court, or even Michael Chiklis, any big, bald, muscular, but maybe kind of chubby dude too. You know.
Oh, I can see Chiklis now doing that too.
Yeah.
Chiklis is
yeah,
good.
totally.
That's a good take on that.
Or Carl Lumbley. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Wait, hold on, help me
He
out
was
here.
on
I know the name.
Alias. He was Sidney Bristow's partner on
He
Alias.
was
He just
Mantis.
recently- Yeah.
And the original Fox
And
series,
he
yeah.
just recently guested on Supergirl, which is why I had him in my head. But he'd be great.
He has an accent on an X-Files episode as well. I remember. That's all I remember for the X-Files episode. He has I can't remember where he's supposed to be from in that episode. But, oh, yeah, Carl Lumbley. Underused actor. I'm happy to see he's in Supergirl, though. I do like Carl Lumbley a lot from his Alias days, especially.
He's John Jones's father.
Oh, man.
Spoilers. Sorry, Supergirl spoilers.
The CW verse. I got to get back on the train here.
That'd be our spin-off.
There's a lot of other minor characters. We're going to talk about some of them in the cemetery in a second. You know, like you mentioned, Dan, you mentioned Hax and Nord and these other people, but these are the main characters who kind of are the more well-rounded, or the characters that people that certain sections really tend to focus upon. So we wanted to knock those out really quickly. But man, you guys smell that?
What is
smell
it?
that?
No, what?
It smells like death. Hold on, let me see what. Oh, guys. It's Nort. He's here. It seems like somebody escaped the cemetery.
What's the bottom of the truth?
Well, sometimes that is better. The person you put up there ain't the person that comes back. It may look like that person, but it ain't that person. Because whatever lives in the ground beyond that cemetery ain't human at all.
This is not a horror book by any means, especially compared to some of the earlier Stephen King works, but there are definitely some horrifying elements found within, namely from our good friend Nord, who I made that just great transition with earlier on. So let's step into the cemetery and what Randall calls it's dew grass, I believe it was. Mac, do you have anything for the cemetery in your research here? Your notes?
I only have like a few things here.
Yeah.
I love on page 62 of Null, where when Allie's like, kill me, Roland, and he mentions the thing about, they've all gone to the land of 19. I kind of love that line.
Yeah. Well, let's go in a circle so we don't accidentally repeat ourselves.
That's just one instance. I just thought it was really creepy.
Allison?
We can sort of travel to the same place but another time, and count this one for word processor of the god as well, because this is when Jake dies on our Earth.
Yeah.
And it's so good that I just want to read it. And you could read the entire section, the whole bit that's in italics, and it would all be good.
Ugh.
But we'll just do this chunk. Jake feels nothing but surprise and his usual sense of headlong bewilderment. Is this how it ends? Before he's bowled better than 270? He lands hard in the street and looks at an asphalt-sealed crack some 2 inches from his eyes. The book bag is jolted from his hand. He is wondering if he has skinned his knees when the car belonging to the businessman wearing the blue hat with the jaunty feather passes over him. It is a big blue 1976 Cadillac with white wall Firestone tires. The car is almost exactly the same color as the businessman's hat. It breaks Jake's back, mushes his guts to gravy, and sends blood from his mouth in a high-pressure jet. See? Ugh. He turns his head and sees the Cadillac's flaming taillights and smoke spurting from beneath its locked rear wheels. And it's
he's still alive after that.
And we'll jump ahead just a little bit. Blood runs from Jake's nose, ears, eyes, rectum. His genitals have been squashed. He wonders irritably how badly he has skinned his knees. He wonders if he'll be late for school. It just, and the rest of the segment is mostly him describing in great detail the reactions of the people who are standing nearby and who is screaming and who is running. And the bit at the end, he looks at his hand. He has never bitten his nails. That's the line that gets me. But God, there are some scary sequences in this book, and I'm excited to talk about a lot of them. But that was the only one where I went,
Yeah. It reminds me of the Toxic Avenger movie. Everybody here seen that?
Yeah.
When this kid gets run over by a car and it's disgusting. But
it reminds me of the old Running Man, where the old Running Man is dragging his intestines behind him.
He's getting his intestines caught in people's shoes or whatever it is.
Just that line about as Jake looked at his hand, or he died looking at his hand, and that's like the last. It's just so real. Yeah,
that was definitely in my notes here too.
Yeah.
Dan, did you have something before I?
I do, yeah. We're doing a little word processor of the gods combined with the cemetery. The whole slow mutant sequence is really disturbing to me for a couple of reasons. First, they are on this hand cart for so long, just seeing the mutants on the side of them before they really know if they're going to do anything to them, and that's really scary. Just this idea of seeing animals or wildlife. I mean, I don't know if you count them as wildlife, but seeing these things at a distance and not sure if they're going to do anything. And then when they do attack, it's almost very slow. You see like a tentacle lying across the track, and they prop those rocks up and everything. There's a description though of them that I think is just really chilling. So here it is. Here it goes. The gunslinger began to pump steadily again, and the handcar picked up speed. The slow mutants fell back a step and watched them go with faces hardly human, or pathetically so. Faces that generated the weak phosphorescence common to those weird deep-sea fishes that live under incredible black pressure. Faces that held no anger or hate on their senseless orbs, but only what seemed to be a semi-conscious idiot regret. I'm always terrified of things that are causing you harm just based off instinct. And I think that that description just captures that. And the fact that, the slow mutants probably aren't driven by the man in black or anything. They're just driven by this impulse in their brain that they can't really articulate, because that just makes them a foe that's harder to defeat. And Roland keeps pumping bullets into them, and it does nothing. There's just a dumbness about them that just gives me the heebie-jeebies, as I like to say.
Yeah, I'll kind of jump on that slow mutants bit here. I've got a little piece here, which is straight out of a horror film. The gunslinger says, they're slow mutants. I don't think they'll bother us. They're probably just as frightened of us as we are. One of the forms broke free and shambled toward them. The face was that of a starving idiot. The naked body had been transformed to a knotted mess of spectacular limbs and suckers. I feel like it's one of those gotcha moments that would happen in a horror movie. That came to life on the page, A couple of things I don't want to not talk about. The speaking demon that he finds in the basement. I love you don't see what this thing is really.
Yeah.
And the Oracle from the whole succubus that we didn't really talk about a lot.
Well, those two sequences feel really linked.
Yeah.
Because there's a place that it could be creepy to walk into, even if there wasn't a demon in it. Like if that cellar scene would be a little bit scary, even if he went down there, and the only thing that happened is he heard the foundations creaking, it would still be really scary.
I agree.
With the mutant spiders and all the rotting food, and he's just slowly bringing cans up and going back down. It's just creepy. And then the stone circle.
Yeah.
It's like they're just. I mean, those are places where people accidentally travel back in time to Scotland. They're places where Aslan gets killed. Like nothing good happens in a stone circle.
I got your Outlander reference. I've read enough Entertainment Weekly to know what you're talking about now.
I also love that basement sequence because it reminded me, because I was thinking of The Stand constantly, of when Tom and Nick go into the basement during the tornado and they think that something's down there. And I don't know. I just, for some reason, I was like, oh, that's so. It's just reminded me of that.
Yeah,
There's something in the basement. And I don't know. It's just everyone's always says something creepy in the basement. There's another thing that kind of weirded me out was when they come across the mummies later on. I think it's either right after the Slow Mutants or right before.
It's right before.
Yeah, and they're like in like blue and gold, and you're like, well, either they're like the old train conductors of the platform, or they could be. I think they're probably more likely soldiers from the old war, because they said like there was a gas that they would use and they kind of crippled them into mummies. And,
gets mentioned.
Yeah, it's that always kind of creeped me out.
Still holding a newspaper.
Yeah.
Oof. Hey, I guess print isn't dead after all.
Because think about how quick that would happen.
But the people reading it sure are. Let's see. Allison, you have another one you want to mention?
No, you've covered all mine.
Yeah, everybody kind of covered mine too, but I do want to mention the first encounter that Nort has.
All of the descriptions of the Hawk's body when the Hawk is getting killed.
Oh, yeah.
That's terrible.
Poor David, Poor David.
Anyway, yes.
But the Nort, I got to talk about that Nort encounter, the first one with the gunslinger I've got here. He suddenly became aware that the room had once more gone silent. He had tasted tension in the air. He turned around, stared into the face of the man who had been asleep by the door when he entered. It was a terrible face. The odor of the devil grass was a rank miasma. The eyes were damned, the staring, glaring eyes of one who sees but does not see. Eyes ever turned inward to the sterile hell of dreams beyond control. Dreams unleashed, then out of the stinking swamps of the unconscious. The cracked lips writhed, lifted, revealing the green, mossy teeth, and the gunslinger thought, he's not even smoking it anymore. He's chewing it. He's really chewing it. And on the heels of that, he's a dead man. You should have been dead a year ago. And on the heels of that, the man in black did this. This is your first real, I don't know. Zombies in bars always disturb me, I guess. What can I say? Here's my weak spot, everybody.
I think the Weed Eater is scary in the same way the Slow Mutants are, just because. And it's weird too, because the Weed Eater never really does anything physically to Roland that's threatening, but he's driven by that same kind of idiot instinct as the Slow Mutants. That just seems to be, and it just plays into this idea of this world being a place of decay and entropy in the slowest sense possible. Like nothing is really fast in this book except for Roland. I mean, he when he shoots, but like everything he encounters that's disturbing is more lethargic and creepy in the same way that a wounded animal would be creepy, I think.
I agree. Again, this is not a horror novel by any means. There's just some scary moments that happen along the way to Roland and Jake and Allie and everybody else. That's actually all I have too for the cemetery. Anybody else? Mac also doesn't have anything else. Mac, Dan, do you have anything else?
I mean, you could count the horrific sequences on one hand in this, I think, because the book is chopped up so cleanly. Like it's essentially one frightening incident per chapter, I would think.
And that makes sense because, again, he sent them all off individually over
a
span of 3
exactly.
years to those different. You want each one of them to kind of have climaxes and whatnot.
Yeah.
Well, if we're all done there, let's plug our computers in and cue up the old Microsoft Word maybe and enter into the word processor of the gods.
We're gonna make a new rule. Whenever I'm in here, you hear me typing. Whether you don't hear me typing, what the fuck you hear me doing in here, when I'm in here, that means that I am working. That means don't come in. Now, do you think you can handle that?
Yeah.
Fine. Why don't you start right now and get the fuck out of here?
This book has got a lot of King's more romantic writing. I think it's a lot of the book is just word processor of the god in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But there are a couple specific moments I really want to mention here. But I will give the floor to Dan to kick it off for the first time here. Dan.
All right. Yeah. Like you said, I mean, I feel like you really could pick any paragraph from here, but something that stands out to me is the Oracle in the Mountains, because they have a bit of respite there when they're by the stream and everything. I mean, obviously some horrific things happen there, but I feel like the way the environment changes suddenly, it gets a little bit calmer. So I'm just going to read just the beginning paragraph of that. Let's start with, even on the hard scrabble below, where they had toiled and fought for every foot in the killer's sun. They had been able to hear the sound of crickets rubbing their legs seductively together and the perpetual green of willow groves above them. The gunslinger remained calm in his mind, and the boy had kept up at least a pretense of a facade, and that had made the gunslinger proud. But Jake hadn't been able to hide the wildness in his eyes, which were white and starry, the eyes of a horse scenting water, and held back from bolting only by the tenuous chain of its master's mind, like a horse at the point where only understanding, not the spur, could hold it steady. The gunslinger could gauge the need in Jake by the madness, the sounds of the crickets bred in his own body. His arms seemed to seek out the shale to scrape on, and his knees seemed to beg to be ripped in tiny, maddening, salty gashes. Sorry, I guess it's a little bit more horrific than I thought, but just the description of the willow groves above and the crickets and everything. It's this nice separation, I think, from the desert environment that we've seen so much throughout the book. So that one stands out to me just as a nature description.
Yeah, again, that goes back to how good he is at not just the literary world building, but the literal world building within the whole
just
whole
like
saga.
Describing environments. I mean, I think this might be one of the strongest books in terms of describing the physical environment around the characters. And once again, it's an environment we haven't been to before. We've seen Maine's small towns. We've seen them going across the American West, but we haven't really seen this weird, fantastical world of jungles and deserts and made up things. So yeah, that one really stands out. I love it.
And there's a little bit of a table setting here early on when he's talking to Brown, who's a character I like too. He's just not a lot of it, obviously, but they're eating dinner, and the gunslinger says, "Do you believe in the afterlife?" And Brown nods and just says, "I think this is it." And that once again just kind of tells you not only is the gunslinger in a bad place, but he is literally in a bad place, and the entire world has gone to shit. And it's a subtle way of just saying, "Here's where we are." Like, the world is awful.
Yeah,
right
I'm
now.
glad you mentioned that because I really liked that portion, and I had that in my random notes section. That is this the afterlife? Is this not reality? And that comes right out the gate too. So
especially when you're reading it for the first time, and who knows? Who knows what any of this is. My big entry I want to read here is it's another description about Roland and Jake, and it's also something to do with 19 and resumption, which is actually what opens up this book. We probably should mention that. Says he passed smoke between his mouth and nostrils, looking down at the boy. Wait, Dan, did you read some of this already? I want to make sure I'm not.
That's close. That's like on the next few pages, but I didn't read that part though.
Yeah, okay. Well, this is like the how we make large circles in Earth for ourselves.
Yeah, it's another horse comparison.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah,
side, but no, this is a different one though. Yeah,
how we make his inner thought. How we make large circles in Earth for ourselves. Around we go back to the start, and the start is there again. Resumption, which was ever the curse of daylight. How long before we see daylight again? And again, 19 resumption. That's the big word that opens up this book, and every one of the novels has 19. And I believe the letter R, a word with the letter R starting it off, going ahead. So you should definitely remember 19 resumption going ahead too. Mac, did you have anything else in your random notes? Or
yeah, for word processor, I've there's a few things here. I'm not going to read, but if you want to read or go back, but some things we already mentioned, like Nort's reanimation, that sequence is great. That's on page 35 of the Null edition.
That's when the Man in Black resurrects. Yeah, that's some
correct.
disturbing stuff too.
The word is 19, which I believe is on page 37 and 38. I want to say that's the letter that.
Yeah, I read the letter
gives
earlier.
Walter,
Yeah, that's great.
I love the moment when Roland is blowing everybody away in Tull, and he doesn't realize. He realizes after the fact that he'd been screaming the whole time. That's really cool. Cuthbert becomes a gunslinger. That section where Roland kind of mentions, I think it's page 108 or 109, when he's like, he basically says that Cuthbert at that point had become a gunslinger. I can't remember. I think it's in.
It's something the way he reacts. He reacts to something a certain way.
Something.
Yeah.
And then I do have a couple of little things here. On page 134, he says his teeth felt strange in his head, tiny tombstones set in pink, moist earth. I like that description of his teeth after he's like kind of drugged out from whatever Martin or Walter gives him.
Yeah,
that's cool. Dan, do you have any other ones?
Oh man, I mean, let's see. Let me find the description of. did you already talk about the description of the weed eater? Yeah, with like the mossy teeth and everything like that. That's one that stands out to me.
Cemetery. Yeah.
I almost want to just like flip to a random page, and I feel like there would be something there. Let's see. I'm just gonna flip to. All right. Here's the scene with Hex, in the kitchen, or after they've been in the kitchen. They sat behind a huge, sweating stone colonnade out of sight of the kitchen and gobbled their pie with their fingers. It was only moments later that they saw shadows fall on the far curving wall of the wide staircase. Now that's just like a kind of innocuous description of them sneaking food and eating outside the kitchen. But even that, just it's so evocative, and it's right up there, I think, with the best fantasy writing in terms of describing the environment. I just feel like the book is, for being so short, it is so indulgent in terms of painting the scenery. And I can't remember that well, but I wonder if the later books have that same quality to them. Like Drawing the Three is a little bit different because of the world they enter. I wonder if the books that explore Midworld more thoroughly, I'm trying to remember if they had that same.
I think they do, especially when a lot of the focus is in Midworld. But we'll get to those. Definitely. Yeah. Hey Dan, let's do a test while Mac reads some more for word processor. Go to page 119 and 219.
Okay.
A little tribute to 19 to see if there's some nice prose in those pages.
Yeah, sure.
Mac, but while you're doing that, Dan, Mac, do you have some more?
Yeah, I just have one more. I think it's on page 205 of Null. He says he was become a werewolf of his own making. And I just love that line where he says the boy had become him and he had become the boy. He'll never forget his death or killing him. And I love that idea of or the use of werewolf, I guess. It's not necessarily the supernatural element of it, but just how now they are one and the same because of this thing that they've this haunting thing that he's done.
Well, I love werewolves.
I'm a big werewolf fan.
Thank you very much. So yeah, Dan, did you find anything on page 119 or 219?
119 is a great one. It's in italics. It's when he's remembering what happened to Susan Delgado, who we'll find more about later on. Here it is. Susan. So this is from when he was I won't say what age, but when he was younger. Susan, his beloved, was dying before his eyes. As he watched, his arms held by two villagers on each side, his neck dog caught in a huge rusty iron collar, she was dying. Even through the thick stench of the fire, Roland could smell the darkness of the pits, and he could see the color of his own madness. Susan, lovely girl at the window, horse drover's daughter. Now, I will say, I think that specific event gets a little bit retconned later on. Well, because the circumstances I remember, Susan's, not spoiler alert because you've read it. Susan's death, I think, is actually a little bit different in terms of where Roland is when that happens. But I think that's still really, really cool and kind of horrific. So my book only goes to page 216. There's nothing after that. So I'll just read the.
Well, you know what, Dan? If you flip the 6, it becomes a 9. So there you go.
That's what Drake said. You turn the 6 upside down, it's a 9 now. That's what Drake said. I
wrote that for Drake, so of course I know that.
Ghost wrote it, yeah. Let's see. That song probably has like 20 different writers. I'm sure your name's in there.
Drake's our modern day Shakespeare. But go ahead.
Yeah, I actually do love Drake.
I know. Shots fired.
Yeah, shots fired. So why don't I close out word processor then with the final passage from the book, which I think is great. There the gunslinger sat, his face turned up into the fading light. He dreamed his dreams and watched as the stars came out. His purpose did not flag, nor did his heart falter. His hair, finer now and gray, blew around his head, and the sandalwood and laid guns of his father lay smooth and deadly against his hips. And he was lonely, but did not find loneliness in any way a bad or ignoble thing. The dark came down on the world, and the world moved on. The gunslinger waited for the time of the drawing, and dreamed his long dreams of the Dark Tower, to which he would someday come at dusk and approach, winding his horn to do some unimaginable final battle. And I think
you just want to keep reading at that point,
it's so gripping and like
cliffhanger type ending,
it sets everything up in more ways than one that you'll see.
And it's a cliffhanger, and not in the way the Empire Strikes Back is a cliffhanger. Which I love that ending, but it's a different type of cliffhanger. It's definitely the end of the Gunslinger story, but there's another story that's about to start. I really like. I just love that ending of the.
It lays the cards very nicely for the next.
And speaking of cards, there's a lot of cards in that last sequence with the Man in Black, Dan.
7 of them, right? 7.
Yeah, there's 7. Some of them are not for the gunslinger himself.
No,
we'll talk about that a little bit later too.
Yeah.
there's been some beautiful writing we've been talking about for the last few minutes here, but I think it's time to get into some of the sloppier writing that King sometimes succumbs to when it comes to depictions of sex and depictions of just feces, for instance. And I think the best way to kick it off is it's time to get into some pound cake.
After all you've been taught, everyone isn't bad, Mama. Everything isn't a sin.
Come to your closet and pray. Ask to be forgiven.
He's a nice boy, Mom. You like him. You really like him, Mama.
Who wants to take the first slice of this pound cake? We got a lot. Actually, we don't. You know what? We don't have a lot of pound cake, Allison, do we?
No, and that's actually, I would like to comment on the absence of pound
Yeah.
cake. There are certainly some moments that are grotesque, and there's the aforementioned gun assault, rape, abortion.
Yeah, that's right.
I had that in there too. Yeah,
but for the most part, I think. And I don't, and because I read the original version but don't really remember it, other than that I liked it. I don't know, and Mac, you can maybe speak to this, whether or not there was more. But my impression is that this book got longer and not shorter.
Yeah, no, there wasn't.
It's a little longer.
They said that there was no added pound cake.
It's like he was in
or vice versa.
Short story mode when he was writing it. And so it's so spare, and it feels like so little is wasted, and what's there that could be considered extraneous is atmospheric. So there's not one reference to a dick popping out of a vagina with the sound of a champagne cork. That happens not once.
Oh,
Never
God.
happens.
Ew.
And that's great. And it's don't get me wrong, I love that stuff, and this is my favorite segment of the show. But I have basically nothing. And it was a great after the Bachman books. It was a pretty good experience to dive back into this and come up with. Basically.
He's definitely in romantic writing mode throughout the entire book. Like Danny mentioned earlier, like the whole fantastical element of the whole book. So it's hard for him to use the word dick too many times, I guess, you know. So we were blessedly able to avoid that. Or Happy New Year, everybody. But in addition to the sex stuff that we will talk about in Pound Cake, we also like to talk about certain bodily functions, maybe, or references to that. And I do have a couple things here. He refers to feces as man scat at one point, which I found to be gross.
I guess that makes sense. Scatological. Yeah. What about Scatman Crothers? That's
Scatman Crothers.
You guys talk about the Scatman. All I can think of is the Rat Man.
The Rat Man forgive you this time.
The Scatman forgive you this time. And we mentioned this earlier on. I like how this book just takes you places where you're not expecting once you read the first 5 pages. I love that. I think 6 pages into the book, a raven makes the beans the magical fruit joke. And I'm like, okay, I'm ready for this story. It just disarms you in ways. And that wasn't a slam. I actually like that bit of the book.
No,
but
me too.
It's a fun fart joke. Page 6 of an epic Western science fiction saga. You know,
he really should have gotten his own entry in Zeros and Villains.
I know. We should have spent 20 minutes on Zoltan. I love Zoltan.
Dan, tell us about your Zoltan tattoo.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's well, you know how Roger Stone has the Richard Nixon tattoo between his shoulder blades. I have Richard Nixon with Zoltan on top of him, pecking his eyes out and eating them.
Oh, I love Roger Stone so much.
He's a really good guy. Yeah,
he's a real American. If you want to get, you know what? We're having a good time talking about the Gunslinger. Let's not bring Roger Stone and his man scat into the discussion here. But
just bring his Twitter thing. That's why.
Again, it's a testament to King in the story. It's romantically told in many ways. Mac, do you have any pound cake?
We mentioned some things earlier, like just Jake measuring his poops. Sylvia Pittston gets the gun. Let's see. I think, and this is actually written quite well, like his relationship with Allie and like when they're like getting it on and everything. I'm trivializing the hell out of it. But I thought it was interesting that the Gunslinger's a baller. I mean, like
a baller.
She says please, and then like before, I want that. Like he's doing some things in the sack that I'm like, what's going on here? And then the only thing that was like really pound cake-esque to me was page 65, the Null edition. It says, the man whom he had first seen sitting gravely on the steps of the mercantile store made a sudden and amazing load in his pants. I think that's like when they're all like, losing it and going after him. And everything.
There are the descriptions of somebody's daughter, somebody's like comely.
Oh yeah, because I think it's the person who watches over the mule, right? Because he like grabs his daughter's breast.
He's having sex with his daughter.
Yeah, so there's that, but even that was
that's just creepy. That's not.
Yes, absolutely, and it comes and
disturbing.
goes so quickly.
That's deliberately disturbing.
That's a little pound cake that was left in the cemetery.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
It's funny because I think I get disappointed when King at this point doesn't have some ridiculous description of sex or shitting, because he really doesn't. Like we said, even though there are sexual moments in this book, they're not described with the champagne pop or the she was snugger than before, like the weird obsession with nubbins or anything like that. Like they're really, but it bums me out when we don't have that to talk about, because then like Alice too. But,
I like to kind of knock him down a little bit every once in a while, but
damn it, King, why did you have to be so elegant?
Don't worry, we've got. Trust me, I was looking earlier today about the rest of his '80s books. Well, there's plenty of serving to go around pound cake coming up in the next couple of weeks.
There's
and
also
champagne and Happy New Year champagne corks too.
As the Dark Tower series progresses and Roland has more sex, there are some phrases I remember. Dan Fleeger, who's been on the podcast, there's this one that he always says where Roland's with this old woman, and it's like it's a pun, and it is awful. So I mean, but that's like book 6 or 7 or something. So
sounds punishing. I'm looking forward to talking about that. Does anybody have any more pound cakes? Your last chance before I close the refrigerator, and then we save it for later. Are we done?
Over it, please.
Okay. Well, the Man in Black talks about Legion a lot, but let's talk about Dominion, namely King's Dominion.
There's another world out there.
I know there is.
This King's Dominion is going to be a little tricky because, in a lot of ways, all of King's, or many of King's stories, novellas, books, novels, whatever, they all connect to the Dark Tower. The Dark Tower truly is the nexus that connects not just universes, but the Stephen King universe. But there are a couple things, one specifically, Mac, actually, I think he mentioned earlier, the Gunslinger thinks that Jake has the touch, and that's mentioned in books like The Shining and even The Stand with Leo. But honestly, for me, that's where it really cuts off in a lot of ways. Obviously, all that stuff is going to connect to future Dark Tower books, which we'll talk about a little bit in a minute. But do you guys have anything else for the King's Dominion section? Dan, do you have anything?
It's hard because I feel like if we want anything really specific, it does spoil things later on. I don't even want, and I keep trying to remember if maybe we have in previous episodes, but I don't even want to spoil how King's entire bibliography is connected by the Dark Tower, because that's the way they end up doing that. And I think around books 5 and 6. I don't know, it's a real treat if you listeners don't know how it's connected already. So it's weird to be so short with this because it is so comprehensive. But yeah, just know that this series literally connects everything King has ever done. In terms of specific instances in this, and we've talked about Randall Flagg already. We talked about the number 19 being a theme throughout. I'm trying to think if there is, I don't know, at least in the older version, I don't know if there are any like specific instances to already existing works or works to come other than the kind of big overall shebang.
I don't either, Dan. Again, the only thing I could think of, the only note I really made was the touch reference, honestly.
Yeah,
everything
exactly,
else is kind of, future books will allude to these books, in that way. But Mac, did you have anything specific, or?
I did, but it's definitely a reference to a future short story and definitely a future Dark Tower story. So I'm going to hold that off for another little section that we're going to run into. Yeah, and as a matter of fact, let's kind of connect this right now. Because a lot of things happen here that are going to be alluded to in future books, and because Mac and I and Dan have had the privilege of rereading these books, we kind of know what's going ahead. So there's a couple things I want people to remember, and you guys feel free to chime in. By the way, we're recording this a little out of order, so Allison is not. That's why Allison's been so quiet, because she's not here for this section, by the way. So you'll hear her pop up again in about 5 minutes. But a couple things to remember. I mentioned this before. Resumption is very important to remember. Mm-hmm. And during the encounter with the Oracle, and also later on with the Man in Black, Roland learns a lot about his future. Very vague, but he learns some things. And this conversation goes like this. 3 is the number of your fate.
The first is young, dark-haired. A demon has infested him. The name of the demon is heroin. For the second, she comes on wheels. I see no more. And the third, death, but not for you.
We've come up with a new category for when we do these Dark Tower books. For those of you who have read the books and are going back and rereading or just listening to these for the insight. So stop here if you haven't heard, or just check the bookmarks and jump to the next section. But this new category is going to be called Things We Glean Along the Beam. And in this beam is the Path of the Bear, Shardik, for those of you who obviously have already read these.
Or don't care about being spoiled.
Yeah. So the first thing is page 10 of the Null edition. They mention the Manny, who show up in the Wolves of the Kala, which I thought was interesting. Page 44, they talk about what's on the other side of the desert, and they say that some people think it's a green ocean of monsters, which is obviously the Thenny, or the Mist, we will recognize because, that obviously plays a huge part. Yeah, there's a ton of mention of Megis, Sheb, Reap Knight, Susan, and all that stuff's obviously from,
Wizarding Glass.
Wizarding Glass. The Gunslinger, right out the gate, and this is a difference from the original to the new one, he is very dizzy when we first meet him at the beginning of the book, and it's a reference to this being, another round of the wheel of Ka, that he's stepped through the tower door, and this is another revolution. Sylvia Pittston mentions the Antichrist is coming and calls something. Basically mentions the Crimson King for the first time.
Yep.
And if you guys ever remember anything or want to jump in here, just let me know. I just have some bullets.
No, I've got the same notes. And I guess to go back to the very, very beginning of the book, there's a passage, I think it's on page 2, where he says, "Why should that dizziness make him think of his horn and the last of his old friends, both lost so long ago at Jericho Hill? He still had the guns, his father's guns, and surely they were more important than horns or even friends, weren't they?" The horn is obviously a huge part of what ends up being the path he has to go on again. The reason he has to go on this whole thing again,
The Man in Black spoke of the King's Child, a red prince, and again we could think of that as the Antichrist, or probably I guess Mordred to an extent, like if had he let that birth happen, maybe. Roland mentions vampires on page 124, which I think is interesting because that definitely connects the world to Barlow and Salem's Lot. The fact that vampires exist in both worlds.
The Little Sisters of, how do you say it? Little Sisters of
Eluria?
Eluria, yeah. Which is a short story that takes place in Midworld. I think from Everything's Eventual.
Yes, that's correct.
Which you get to,
Page 137, the Oracle. Before we get to Walter O'Dim and the tarot cards, she also says that 3, this is the number of your fate, which would be the drawing of the 3.
That's what I was talking about with the cards.
Yeah, absolutely. There's obviously, like Justin said, there's tons of foreshadowing with the tarot cards. North Central Positronics is mentioned, like you said, and that's really all I have. And I think this is I think the Dark Tower is the only story that happens along the Path of the Bear, as far as I can remember so far, that I've any mention.
Because everything else is either it's an Arware or a version of Arware, not in this particular where. As people who have read these books will understand what the wares and the winds mean. But so there's some more little hints there. And if you don't care about spoilers, hope you enjoyed that. And if you do care about spoilers, I hope that you did skip over all of this. Otherwise, welcome to the Dark Tower. Hope you enjoy reading it. But let's get into our final thoughts here.
You ready?
Yeah, we've been ready for an hour.
Okay, I'll be right there.
You said that a half hour ago. Yeah, my dad's weird. He gets like that when he's writing.
So let's kick it off with a return visit from Allison here. Hold on one second.
This is a quick read, but a very, I used the word elegant earlier, and I'll use it again now, a very elegant one. It feels a little bit like not a word out of place. It's a great introduction to some characters who are now super duper dead or super dead again. and some that we'll be spending a lot of time with, which is exciting. And there are a couple of sequences as good as anything in King's best work. So I really dig this book, and I am going to give it 4 bright red Pennywise clown noses.
So we've got a 4-noser. Dan, do you want to go next on your clown nosies?
Sure. I love the Gunslinger. How many? God, if I said I feel like such an idiot. I think it's because I'm rusty because I haven't been on in a while. I keep starting off everything. I love this. Anyway, Gunslinger is great. As Max said, Justin said, it does feel much more like a prelude to the proper quest. And I think that's because King, when he wrote it, was figuring that stuff out too. Even with the retconning, there is a little bit of a sense of him being aimless. And I don't mean that as a knock necessarily, but you can tell he knew this was going to be a big saga, but he was still figuring out how everything was going to come together. So it feels a little bit more minor, obviously, than later Dark Tower books. That being said, I love his descriptions of everything in this. I love how it's this weird Western tone poem, and it was so different from anything he had done earlier on, and obviously it will tie into a lot of his other works later on. So I'm going to go with 3.5 bright red Pennywise clown noses.
Yeah, that sounds like you think it's a good book to me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's interesting because, like you said, Allison not having read it before. It's weird knowing what's going to come later on. So I wonder if my rating would be slightly higher if I was reading it for the first time as well. But I mean, it's like an almost 4 for me, but I'll go 3.5.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to Allison's take on these future books, especially the ones that are
coming.
Drawing
the 3, especially, man. So good.
Tremendous. Fleetwood Mac, what do you think? There we go. Finally used that expression.
Oh boy. I'm gonna give it 3.5 as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Would you want to elaborate on that?
I mean, I agree with everything that everybody's pretty much already said. This was my introduction to Stephen King, period. So I have a special relationship with it. After revisiting it, though, I didn't love it as much as I remember loving it. And I think it's just because after reading the rest of the series, there's just other books that I just fantastically loved way more than this. Yeah. So I've got to knock it off at least half a nose. So I'm going to give it 3.5 bright red Pennywise clown noses.
All right.
And that's all I have to say.
Yeah. And for me, again, you don't have to read this book. I'm kidding, Mac. I was waiting for Mac to
oh, boy.
I think this, again, I mentioned this earlier. I think like I said, it works really good if you look at it as an extended prologue to the 6 books that follow. I don't think it's up to par with the future books, except for one maybe. I think it's better than one of the books that's going to be coming up.
I think I agree with you on that one.
I know Mike Ruffin will not be agreeing with us on that. But does a great job in so few pages, essentially, compared to his other books of building a world, of introducing us to a world, and making us feel like we could become a part of this world, much like Ariel in The Little Mermaid.
Boy,
I think that the climaxes, there's a couple anti-climaxes I feel in this book. I don't know if the Slow Mutants battle really works as a climax, and I don't know if the whole existential universe in 20-page climax works with the Man in Black at the very end. I think that might have gone on a little too long. Mm-hmm. But again, if you treat this as the beginning of something as opposed to the end of a book, I think it works quite well. Again, this is all because of what I know lies ahead. The comparison is inevitable when you're rereading it as opposed to reading it for the first time. So I can only base it off of that. But I will also give it 3.5 bright red Pennywise clown noses. It's a good start to, I think, is a great series, and it's with some flaws along the way. But I do think it's King's ultimately his magnum opus. So. We're going to talk a little bit more in a minute about the comic book adaptation, and of course, God help us all, the movie adaptation. But before we do that, we would like to say, Allison, thanks again for being on, and we hope that you're on all the Dark Tower books going forward, and we'll have some spacing in between, don't worry. But we hope to see you, obviously, way before we get to the drawing of the 3, which will not be for a little while.
Yeah, so. I'm pretty sure you're going to see me this week, so.
I'll see you. You're right. I will personally be seeing you. I'm using the we as in... Well, I don't know when you're going to see Dan again. Who knows? Dan's going to have to come back here to Chicago.
I mean, I'll see you guys. I'll see Justin and Mac in like a week.
That's true. By the time this airs, we will have already seen each other a week before. How's that for some time screwiness?
Where the hell are you going? I want to see see Dan?
There's a wedding. Mike's brother's getting married, so we're gonna go. We're all gonna go meet up and have a little mini reunion down there.
Phil.
That's
Thanks.
right. Phil, again, this is coming out after you've been married. Hopefully, everything went great. And if it didn't, this is all going to be edited out. But so, Allison, we'll see you again soon.
Don't worry, Mom. I know all about cannibalism. I saw it on TV.
See? It's okay. You saw it on the television.
Who are you?
It's you. You're a gunslinger, right?
There are no gunslingers. Not anymore.
Why does the man in black want to destroy the tower?
The tower protects both our worlds. If it falls, hell will be unleashed.
He's like the devil, isn't he?
No, he's worse.
You can't stop what's coming. Death always wins.
Your world might be gone, but mine isn't. If you let that tower fall, billions of people die.
Do they have guns and bullets in your world?
You're gonna like Earth a lot.
All right, let's go.
All right, well, before we get into the comic adaptation and the movie, but we're going to start off with the comic adaptation. Allison has left the building, but fortunately, not Martin Broadcloak, but Michael Broadcloak. That's right. Loser Mike Rothman swooped in to save the day with his computer so he could record this episode. So he's also here. He's going to talk a little bit about the movie later on for the 15th time.
The 50th time. I
At least
I'm
the
the
50th
only
time.
one on this podcast.
Jesus Christ.
Colbert really digs the movie as well as with me. Actually, not. I don't know if we really dig the movie.
Yeah, we'll
but
talk about.
We're the only ones that are actually willing.
This is your
to
opportunity to kind of maybe go back on that too, which will be nice.
Yeah.
So Mike Rothman, editor in chief of Consequence of Sound, has joined us for the last section of this. But we've tasked Walter O'Dan, not Walter O'Dan, but Walter O'Dan. To talk a little bit about the comic book adaptation that came out. When did this come out, Dan? Like 10 years ago? Is that about right?
Well, yeah, it's weird because they started off with the Gunslinger Born, which is essentially the Wizard and Glass story. So they go chronologically. So all the flashback stuff that you're seeing in the book, The Gunslinger, that's what they started with the comics. And
it's chronological order. It's chronological. Yeah.
And it's let's see, that was in 2007, and then the most recent one, let's see, I actually haven't read all of these. Oh, so I guess they're on the Drawing of the Three right now. And it looks like, let's see, I think they may have finished Drawing of the Three. The last issue came out February 8th, 2017. So they probably finished up that arc. So I'm guessing they're going to go on to the Wastelands next. The volumes that the Gunslinger came out of were titled appropriately: The Battle of Tull, The Way Station, and The Man in Black. And those came out 2011 to 2012. Have any of you guys read any of the Gunslinger stuff? I think
Believe it or not, I have only read, I think, 2 comic books in the last 25 years. One was the Creepshow comic book that came out, and then I did read the Gunslinger Reborn. So I did read a lot of that has to do with the flashbacks to Martin Broadcloak and Roland's mother, I believe, in some of those earlier ones, and then again, just some of the Wizard and Glass stuff. But I did read quite a lot of that. Not the whole thing, but I did read quite a lot of that myself.
I read the Drawing of the Three, one that they came up with like when you had like the backstory with Eddie, gets a little bit more into the stuff with his brother, which was really awesome because you didn't really get to see a lot of that in the books, but. And then I kind of fell off because I thought the Susanna one wasn't as interesting, and also the issues were kind of spotty because I didn't really ever know when they were going to come out. But that was recent, actually.
Yeah. And we'll definitely make sure, because I guess the next book we're going to do is Drawing of the Three, and it just so happens that they're on that. So we'll be sure to talk about those comics in more depth going ahead. But Mac, what about you? How much have you read?
I only have the. I think Justin gave me this for as a birthday present or something. It was the Gunslinger Born, basically the Wizard and Glass story.
It's omnibus, I think, right?
Yeah. It's all the collection of all of them, and I started reading that a while back, but I did not get to the Gunslinger. So I'm interested in hearing what Dan has to say.
Dan,
yeah, well, so it's
tell us about it.
That is actually that was the last arc I left off on. I haven't read any of the Drawing of the Three. They did one called Shimi's Tale. I won't say who Shimi is here, but I really do like the timeline that they utilize in these comics because, like Mike was saying, it allows them to fill in a lot of the things that we don't see in the book. For instance, although in Wizard of Glass we see, we see all this flashback stuff with Susan and the big coffin hunters and all that, they actually go really far in depth into from between the events of Wizard and Glass and Gunslinger. So you get to see Roland going home. You get to see how Martin Broadcloak betrayed him and his mother and father, which they mention in this book. And yeah, in terms of like the adaptation, it's really faithful. I almost feel like, I don't want to say it works better than the book because obviously the book is higher quality in terms of the writing, but I feel like because they wrote it at a time when they knew how everything was tied together, even more so than when King went back and revised everything. Because I think when he went back and revised everything, he was still finishing up the series, right? Like book 7 hadn't come out yet. So I think because
I think the series was done by the time the comics came out, though.
No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, with I'm saying with the actual book, like.
Yeah, when he revised the Gunslinger had the last book come out.
No, the last couple of books did not come out. Yeah. Okay.
So because the comics came out after the whole series was done, they feel a little bit more coherent in the way that the book doesn't. And it's divided up almost in the same way the book is too, but I think it makes a little bit more sense and has a little bit more of an idea of where it's going. They also had the same writers throughout this entire series, which is kind of, to be honest, is pretty rare for a Marvel comic. Yeah. So they've had Peter David, who's the dialogue writer, and then they have Robin Firth, who is solely in charge of the adaptation elements of it. So almost like a dramaturg, just making sure everything stays consistent and that kind of making this Dark Tower Bible for her. So because both of them write them and write the issues and work on them, it just feels like really narratively coherent. My big complaint, I think, with the Gunslinger adaptations is for all the Wizard and Glass stuff, they had Jay Lee, who is one of the best comic artists, at work, in my opinion. He did a lot of really avant-garde work with X-Men back in the day. Jay Lee did that first arc, and it looks so surreal and impressionistic and abstract. Like, it really captures the weirdness of that world. And then as it goes on, of course, they start switching artists. And I think by the time we get to the Gunslinger, let's see, it's
the guy that did isn't it the guy that did the Creepshow 2 animation?
Well, fun fact.
That's a major.
We have it's not the same person, but he shares the same name. The main editor of that brought these novels into comic book form is our boy Ralph Macchio. Ralph Macchio, it's not the same Karate Kid Ralph Macchio, which is a little unfortunate to say the least. But because I'm looking through the book right now, The Long Road Home, which was an exclusive to Borders, which if constant listeners, if you remember, Borders was what was once considered a bookstore in these times, where you could actually find books
before the world moved on.
But back before they became CVS's and empty derelict places, you could actually get really cool books and graphic novels and overpriced DVDs and Blu-rays. But one of the ones that Borders had was The Long Road Home, which was kind of like a prequel of sorts.
I think there's some of the Jericho Hill stuff in there, but we'll save that for a future discussion as well.
Yeah,
is it just the Jericho Hill stuff, Mike, or is something else in there?
Well, it's basically, I think it was the follow-up to the Gunslinger Born.
Yeah,
it was.
I mean, that's the thing.
The release-wise,
so many of the comics that for the Dark Tower that I don't know why anyone would ever really need a follow-up book because there's so much in these comics, and I think the comics are considered canon, though, aren't they?
They are, because King worked on them. I mean, Gunslinger Born is essentially Wizard and Glass, and then they have, no joke, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more arcs. So not just issues, but actual graphic novels before they get to the chronological events in the Gunslinger that we're covering. And so that just shows. I mean, they cover all of Roland's childhood, and Long Road Home is after the events of Wizard and Glass, him and his Katek going back to Els. But the artwork in that was still Jay Lee doing all that. Jay Lee, I think, did the first 3 graphic novels, and then the Battle of Jericho Hill, and then they start just switching up the artists every even within the graphic novels themselves. So, for instance, the Way Station has Lawrence Campbell and Richard Eisenough. Then the Man in Black has Alex Maleev and Richard Eisenough. And then the Battle of Tall, the first volume, has Michael Lark, Stefano Guadiano, and Richard Eisenoff. So what happens with comics a lot is that they get because it's expensive to get Jay Lee because he's kind of a legend. So they start getting they get these people who are good but not as good, and the look just isn't as strange and consistent. And that happened with The Stand also. You can just, even though I had the same author, they just start to rush it more. And so I feel like the world just visually isn't quite as well developed, but yeah, it's not bad though. Sorry, what were you gonna say, Mac?
No, I was just gonna agree with you. I think Jay Lee's artwork is gorgeous.
Yeah,
in those
shadow,
editions.
It's so good. Yeah.
Yeah, I know he was here. I think at the C2E2 a couple years ago, and I should have brought some of that artwork from his sign, but he was doing some freestyle stuff, and he had some of the Dark Tower artwork up behind him. So
I heard about this. Wasn't he the guy that was signing everything? I am the best Dark Tower illustrator. That's kind of obnoxious to me.
No. I love Jay Lee. I wish he would do some more of the.
I want to give a shout out too. You mentioned earlier, Dan. I'm looking at this copy of Mike's too. Robin Firth. Robin Firth is. This gives the comics a lot of weight because she is the person. Actually, I think it's a he. Actually, he is the person that does those Dark Tower compendiums.
Yeah,
the go-to reference books for Dark Tower. I think there's 2 volumes that you can find in one. Oh, a concordance. That's what it is. So this person is the go-to for all things Dark Tower.
I think Robin Firth is a woman. I think. Let me see. Yeah, it's a woman for sure. I'm looking at a picture. Yeah. I think I might be wrong. I think she may have been involved in The Stand also, just kind of with our boy Ralph Macchio, which is also really confusing because Ralph Macchio from Marvel, he always signs everything in quotes, the Karate Kid, Ralph Macchio. So I really did think it was him for a while.
Why not go with the nickname, as opposed to hey, the cop from the Deuce.
Yeah, no, I was going to say you can see the real Ralph Macchio tonight on the real one, like the other guy's not real on the season finale of the Deuce, But yeah, so I mean, really, my only complaint about the comics is the art, and I don't even want to call it a complaint because if we hadn't seen what Jay Lee did with it, I think these new guys would look fine. It's very it's a little bit more similar to The Stand art. It's just kind of Americana, Western, straightforwardness. But Jay Lee, I mean, what he does with backgrounds and shadow and all that, it feels. I always maintain that Midworld should feel strange to me. It shouldn't just feel like we're in Once Upon a Time in the West or something. It
seems like it feels like. So you're saying it should feel like it's other midworldly.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just here for the jokes. I haven't read the comics, but go ahead, Matt. You have some?
No, I was going to say one thing that we didn't mention was that in the original Gunslinger book, it was Earth. It was directly Earth, not an illusion or a parallel universe.
Oh yeah, it was supposed to be later on.
There were like a bunch of mentions of.
I don't even understand how that's possible. Was it just like in the future or something?
Yeah, like a pop.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Because
that's why they knew Hey Jude and stuff.
Yeah, they mentioned England, the star Polaris, Mars, Jesus, and other biblical figures, All Saints Eve, Greek, Egyptian gods, and in the revision, all these references were removed to make it only vaguely like our own. Because he didn't have the grand plan of doing having it connect to everything at that point. So I also think that heavily weighs on the way that the world is painted in the original Gunslinger and in Gunslinger we know today, the revised version.
He even says at the end of this original version, there's an afterword by Stephen King, and he screws himself a little bit because he flat out admits that he's like, oh, do I know where all this is going? No, I sure as hell don't. And like he just kind of says he pulled stuff out of his ass for the book, which like I'm glad he's honest. But I'm also like, dude, don't wait till you retcon it later on. You don't have to
exactly. I say, I want to make sure this was absolutely clear. My vision from 40 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. So but yeah, so I recommend the comics. Especially, I mean, we'll get more into all the prequel kind of stuff when we talk about Wizard and Glass. But I would recommend any of the comics. I think they're really successful adaptations, and like Mike was saying, super detailed, and also in a weird way, I think they actually give a more linear narrative and tie it all together a little bit better than the books do.
Interesting. Yeah, again, I do plan on. I think eventually, once all these are out, there'll be an even larger omnibus, an omnibus of an omnibus, as it were.
Yeah.
And I do plan on eventually sitting down and finally reading all of these. If there's nothing else to say about the comics, though, let's. God damn it, Dan! You have somehow managed to avoid seeing this film, much like Allison was able to avoid seeing it. We've all seen it. We've talked about it a lot. And before we get started, for a really long, really good, in-depth discussion of the movie from earlier this year, be sure to check out, it's episode 25 of our podcast. And in that podcast, Mike, you were part of it.
Yep.
Loser Randall was there, and a guest loser, Dan Flieger, was a part of that too. I also wrote looking back, probably a 2 kind C- review on the
I think
Consequences
you're a
of
little
Sound.
too actually harsh on it, but it's fine.
You think it was harsh on it?
Yeah, I think you were harsh on it.
Oh boy. Anyway, all that. Let's discuss now, though, what could have. Let's just discuss a little bit about why the book couldn't translate into a movie. I've got some thoughts on that too, but maybe whoever wants to kick it off.
Well, it's not really an adaptation of the Gunslinger because it's supposed to be, like the next revolution.
Yeah.
So
garbage.
the things that they pulled from the Gunslinger is not a lot, to be honest.
Not a lot. No.
It's just Jake.
They don't even have
meeting
a single
Jake.
line.
Jake.
That's it. But the difference in the movie, Jake doesn't get got.
Yeah.
And
Here's the
there's
thing.
no cave.
Yeah,
Oh,
there's no
nothing.
cave. There's no
nothing.
slow mutants. There's a sequence.
There's not even the man. The opening line of the book is not even in the movie.
Yeah,
I think they say it later on.
No, I don't. Maybe later on, but they definitely don't
And it's
say
not.
it.
Somebody
in the
else says
opening.
there's something stupid.
There was supposedly a trailer that had it, but they stopped that also.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the impetus for this film was not to be the Gunslinger. It was always supposed to be some sort of like, at least based on our Hollywood hack, Akiva Goldsman, wanted it to be this like
Hodgepodge
franchise
of-
starter that was kind of like a hodgepodge of everything else. The problem is that you're using so many elements of books 6 and 7 that you're already wrapping up the story before he is even able to start. And as a capsule story, it's a a vastly mediocre film to what we could have gotten based on everything that is in these books. Problem is that I don't think these books aren't for a film. Like a film medium, like it needs to be like in a television.
That's right, Mike, and that's my thing. I feel like I always see these as like 10-episode seasons, right?
Yeah.
And I think that the Gunslinger book would make a great like a debut 2-hour premiere.
Yeah.
I
mean,
You
it
have
could have
the
been a good
entire
movie.
book in a 2-hour HBO series, and then have the series continue.
Look, the problem with the problem with the Dark Tower now is that honestly, the Gunslinger would have been a fine movie. Like you could have made a good movie, but not in this era because the what they wanted to do with this franchise was make it a franchise. They wanted to make it this big blockbuster thing, and the thing is that this era doesn't really demand for slow meditative westerns. And
This era of movies,
and this era of movies, yeah. Like you're just not going to have that, and so the idea of having this. This could easily be a tip off to some sort of whatever you want to call a franchise or a series or anything. The problem is that it would never be able to be a tip off because it would have been slow. It would have been kind of a daunting film to get through because not a lot really happens in this. Like,
I disagree to the extent that I feel like there's a lot that happens in this book. I mean, this is the
hardest one for me to
stuff
get
I
there.
think
That's why
goes
I'm not
so
on this
quick.
podcast.
But you have the demon, you have the meeting of Jake, you have the toll thing, you have the slow mutants. But think about it, if you cut out a lot of the meandering like wandering. There's a lot of like action beats in this that could.
That's
make
why
for
I
a
understand
short,
they could have
for a short
expanded a lot
movie.
of that stuff and make it into a filmic thing. But I don't know.
The
Yeah, but
issue
like
is
when he's in
it-
Toll, he like spends most of the time just hanging out, like having sex with like this woman.
But that's what I'm saying is
No, but there's the
somewhat,
whole,
like,
but there's
they
the whole
can't
North.
just-
then he has this like long conversation with the Man in Black that would never last in this franchise.
I liken it to the
This
beginning of
movie.
like Bone Tomahawk. Like that's not the most action.
Yeah, no, I agree, but the problem
of a
is-
movie ever. But I
But
guess
that's also a direct-to-video movie versus a larger studio picture.
That's what we're saying.
Like you're
This-
not going to have like a. You need
Well, that's what I'm saying. They're not
you need to
gonna
have like a
spend-
good 25-minute. I'm talking like last ending to like the ending to every Kubrick movie, the penultimate scene. Like you need like a 25-minute dialogue heavy scene to do justice to like the Man in Black discussion with
Right,
Roland.
and
like,
yeah, you're right.
And you're never going to get that.
that's
like,
true. In a major movie studio.
Like I agree. There's a lot of like plot points in this story that you could make some sort of adventurous tale, but the problem is like the meat of the story is very like in his head too, for the most part, if I recall.
Well, I think you can.
I mean,
I think the bones of the story could have been translated into a movie. I do. I still think that it could have been, but like you said, Mike, not today, because today it has to be. It would be $100 million budget, and you'd have to make $1 billion. And The Dark Tower, sorry, Akiva, is not going to make $1 billion at the box office. It's just not going to do it.
Well, it's also like it's a very heady like story. I mean, people are fucking idiots today. Like they're not going to like, sit there. I mean, even a movie like Maverick would make it today, and that's like that has like more like action than anything.
Like James Coburn's Maverick,
like
James Garner's.
I'm just trying to
Maverick?
think of like other movies with cowboys in it that were blockbusters at a time. Like the '90s Mavericks was a huge summer success. Today, that movie would make like $30 million. Well, that like separating Mel Gibson, Mad Mel drama aside, that movie would probably make $30 million, but that was like considered a huge hit back in like 93, 94, wherever it came out.
I liken it to like, The Good and the Bad and the Ugly versus Tombstone.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
And they tried to just do Tombstone with this, where I like Tombstone, but they tried to
It's very commercial.
They tried to just make it very commercial.
Yeah.
Very when you're watching the preview for it, like the world and universe they created just looks like, what's that trilogy of movies that came out that's like now the fourth one's going to be on TV.
The Divergent.
Yeah, it's just like Divergent, like that kind of future. Which
is this is another just a big debate about aesthetic, like which is last week Dom, our film editor Dominic Mayer, he wrote this huge thing about Stranger Things and how like nostalgia could be a dangerous thing because at some point you can't keep looking back, you actually have to look forward, and I agree. The thing is that I think one of the things that people love about Stranger Things is the aesthetic, and like how aesthetically movies today are pretty shitty when it comes to aesthetic. Like because there's no like nobody prioritizes aesthetic in Hollywood anymore. They prioritize, and this is something that's been since the 90s. Like they prioritize star power, and they prioritize like what's hits a range of demographics. Like what could be the widest reaching thing for the least amount of buck, or whatever. It's all like brought down to numbers. So like for me, it's like I see like the differences between you look at the Good, Bad, and the Ugly, and then you look at Tombstone. Like the aesthetic between those two movies is already like insurmountable.
You can even do Tombstone and Wyatt Earp. They came around the same time.
Totally different
I was
going to say that, but
but today, but the fact is that the fact that they that they took this incredibly like diverse, different like story, like which is the Dark Tower. I mean, the whole book series is so different than anything that you would ever be able to imagine, and they boiled it down to like like you're saying, like the YA aesthetic, which is just the most monochrome bullshit aesthetic ever.
Yeah, any scene with the Man in Black and like his team
headquarters.
It's like a joke.
Oh yeah,
like, that's just not how
it's
it is
indistinguishable
in the
from everything. I mean,
it tried to take the Dark Tower and which is like a circle and a cylinder, and try to put it into a block format of everything else that we've got, all these young adult novel movies and franchises. And the thing with this is that this would be served as like when Star Wars used to come out every 3 or 4 years. Now in this world, everything has to come out every single year. We got Star Wars movie every single year coming out. The demand for these movies is just dwindling. Like they were talking about turning the James Bond into a universe. The only reason James Bond does so well is because people are dying to see it again because it's been gone for so long. Because some of these James Bond movies of late, like Spectre is not good, but it probably did great at the box office, I'm sure, because people didn't have access to it.
There's no overexposure to these movies, we're saying.
So I just feel like today they would want to capitalize on the idea of the franchise of the Dark Tower. They'd want a movie coming out every year. They were going to do the series. It would be super oversaturated and ridiculous. What they need to do is treat it like Game of Thrones. Just have it come out as a season show that we're used to.
And then totally fumble the 7th season or the 6th or 7th season.
And like rush it into
and rush
7
everything.
Episodes. No, but is it a coincidence though that normally when these movies come out, we find out if they're successful like the weekend of that there's going to be a sequel. But I think in this, the thing we found out pretty soon after was, they're going to make a TV series of Wizards and Glass,
Yeah.
Because they realized like, this thing bombed. I mean, nobody cares.
But the thing, to Mac's point, is even on television, they demand it fast now. I mean, I'm surprised that, Stranger Things wasn't like immediately rushed for summer. Like they actually gave it to October. I mean, I guess that makes more sense, obviously, because it's more of like a horror time and place. But but even like television wise, they still demand it that fast. Like they want things to come out like the next year. Like you got to get it the next year. You got it the next year. And I think I agree with you, Mac. I think there needs to be some distance, and like especially with this series, because it's kind of like the distance between the stories that made it so much more impacting. Like if you just keep continuing it, like it doesn't make the actual journey feel very long either. But I mean, I think aesthetically, like, is a huge problem for the film, because even if you had a cool look, the movie would have been that much more better, that much more impacting. The problem is the Man in Black, everything involving McConaughey, and who I actually thought was going to be a really good,
they have them in kitchens cooking dinner and stuff like that.
It's just so stupid.
Well, when you read the end of the Gunslinger and you have that moment, that long moment where he's talking to Roland about the tarot cards, the Man in Black is he's so unhinged. He's saying things that he doesn't even understand in the context of the world. And then when you jump to seeing like Matthew McConaughey's performance, it's a totally different character, and it's just kind of lame. I don't know. It's not scary. It's not this overarching, the Man in Black is just a minion to an extent, but when you're watching the movie, it doesn't feel like he's really that evil. It doesn't feel like he has really any control over anything. And it just seems like just kind of like a waste of time.
Well, there's like a villain problem that's going on in Hollywood right now, in that like nobody is able to carve out like a good villain anymore. I mean, it's all very like, it's honestly, there's so few over the past 10, 20 years even. Like, I mean, like you have like the Joker, and
those are old characters.
Yeah, that's an old character that's been done before. But like obviously Heath Ledger did, subverted it and made it its own. But when was the last time we actually walked out of a movie and we were like, oh my gosh, what an amazing villain? Like,
it's the Marvel
the new
thing.
Star Wars ones. Like, I guess Kylo Ren could be a good one in this one. He hasn't yet.
I thought Suicide Squad had a great Joker.
Oh god.
Oh yeah.
You know what's great about Suicide Squad?
Well, he was more of a villain behind the scenes.
The villains were the
on
heroes
screen.
in Suicide Squad. I thought that was a great twist.
Well, and I think that King nailed it on the head with this book, where less is more. Walter's only there really at the end.
Yeah.
We get him through a series of other people's stories and like a brief, like the note. But really, we don't really get to see him. It's all flashbacks, and whether or not it's actually him when it's Martin and stuff.
Here's the thing: unless A24 is making this movie, no other studio would touch it unless you got the Akiva Goldsmith cut. I mean, there's just.
I think the problem also is that like they show way too much with him.
Absolutely,
absolutely. If the thing that's great about this book, of which I think are very few things are great about this book. Spoiler alert for my own ratings on this. But I would say the things that are great about this is that you do feel like you're rolling in the sense that you kind of things are in the distance, and you just keep looking, and like when you actually do get close enough, you still actually even feel like you're not even that connected with this person in general. Like everybody he meets, there's some sort of like everything's cloaked in mystery. Like you really don't know too much about any of the characters he comes across with. There is some sort of like distance there. And in the movie, you like literally are spoon fed like everything within seconds. And that's a major problem. But especially with the Man in Black, because what makes the Man in Black so interesting is that you have to just get it by piecemeal. And like, you can't just be giving it all the things. Now, like on the positive end of this, because I do think there are some good things about this adaptation is, as I've joked around multiple times on this podcast, like I loved Idris and I love Tom Taylor. And like, I think those two characters, I actually really do think that Tom Taylor and Idris Elba nailed the mannerisms and what these characters are supposed to do. Like, I mean, I think, and it's not surprising to me that the best scenes are when they're actually just together roaming around Midworld, which to be fair,
isn't that weird? Because that's most of this book,
and that's what this book
what could have succeeded had they just stuck to the
That's
text.
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I
mean, I think if they would have just made a straight ahead thing, made it really, I mean, look, if you would have done it straight ahead with this book, it would not have cost a lot of money, and you would have made the budget back on that for sure. Instead of doing these like explosive New York sequences and this like bullet time Matrix, like post Matrix, like lame sequence.
Studios want to make $1 billion for every movie now.
Studios are morons.
They knew they're
just
sitting here going, okay, this is a franchise, and this could be a franchise, so they treated it like that right out the gate. When they should have done justice to the book, made it a slow western, and you know what? Hey, if it's successful, we could do a sequel, and then the sequel lends itself a lot more to those things because it's very, very crazy. All the stuff that happens with, I don't want to go into that right now, but it lends itself way more to a film. And I think that, and to a bigger budget film.
Well, because you could even cut
more
stuff
special
from this
effects
book
and-
that make it even more simple that you
Well, that's
don't
what I'm
really
saying.
need.
It just you have the bones here, and now just make a good movie out of it. It's like The Shining. I mean, I wouldn't want to go as big of an extreme with The Shining adaptation, but he took the bones and the characters and the place and did something with it. I think you could absolutely take the bones and the characters and the place of the Gunslinger book and make it into a big movie. But again, it's like you said, Mike, in the early review from months ago, is that you need a visionary to do this.
Yeah.
Too. You can't just have somebody who's like cursory read the book years ago and is just somebody's done one movie, has got no real vision.
Nicolaj Arcel.
Arcel, yeah. I mean, look,
whatever.
I'm sure Royal Affair is good, but you needed to have somebody with a true vision.
George Miller.
Muschietti, Flanagan,
Yeah.
and I forgot the new director who directed 1922. Like they had a great take on that material. And you saw it on the screen. I did not see this guy's take on the screen.
Yeah, but according to interviews, he really loves Stephen King and The Dark Tower. So,
Well, and the problem is also that he wasn't just taking the bare bones of this book. They took the bare bones of every single Dark Tower book and just kind of picked and choose like cool things. And as excited as I was to see a lot of those things originally when I was hearing about it, after looking back, it's like, no, you can't just go into like Lord of the Rings, pick all the cool stuff out and put it in one movie and expect it to be good. Like,
what's left for the next two movies?
Way.
You know, it's like
exactly
like the Dutch Hill Mansion thing. It's such a huge part of the third book.
Yeah.
And that's my favorite part of that book.
Yeah.
And now you can't do that. So it's, I don't know. Ultimately,
We really love the movie.
I didn't, I wasn't on that podcast when we went over the movie. So I'll give it my bright red Pennywise clown noses. And it's a 2 at best.
Two bright red Pennywise clown noses. Yeah, I hear you on that. Yeah. Well, God Almighty. You know what's funny is that we will somehow have to talk about this movie again. What's going to happen?
Can you keep talking? Because guess what? It's tied to like every one of the movies.
I know.
That's true.
Except for drawing of the 3, there's not really that much.
But we have to
Drawing
talk
of the
about
3
this.
there.
Somehow we'll still have to talk about this specific movie. We'll probably do a thing in the future, like we'll be talking about the movies of the year, and we'll have to talk about Dark Tower again. I can't wait, to be honest with you. I got a lot more to say.
Well, I mean, I think the sad thing about this one is it's just such a what if. I mean, you watch this movie and you're like, gosh, if you had the same talent that was applied to a better script and a better visionary, like, I mean, I can't even imagine what J.J. Abrams would have been able to do with this. Like, I'm not even a huge J.J. Abrams fan because I think he's kind of a hack also. But like,
But he's great at starting things.
He's good at starting things,
You know?
I guess. Like, if you really wanted to have like a movie that looked like, what's a movie that's kind of like The Dark Tower, I guess. I guess he would probably just start, borrowing from all like the spaghetti westerns, and he could put a lens flare on top of it. But it'd still be better than like any of the stuff that we got with Nicolaj Arcel or Akiva Goldsman. But it's just weird too, because I guess when you look back and see what happened with him and Damon Lindelof, because they were both tied to the adaptation in the beginning, because they bid for, it's that whole infamous story how they bid for $19 or something like that for the thing, and King was like, "You're the one." But like they like kind of copped out. They're like, "Oh well, I don't know how we would adapt. Like I don't know how we would adapt this." It's like, are you kidding me? It's not that hard. It's not that hard. I mean, it's like.
I think
just do the
that
TV
what they
series.
realize is what we realize is that the studios just aren't going to let them do that. And I think that if J.J. Abrams did it now with the power that he has now in the world, because when he was opting for those rights, what had he done at that point?
Abrams
Lost?
is pretty well established though, because Lost is such a huge hit.
Yeah,
That
but
was
he
really
wasn't
good.
a big like film movie director at the time, was he?
He wrote the screenplay for Regarding Henry.
That's very true.
And I think he opens up every door.
I think I think at that point actually though, Mission Impossible 3, he had done that.
Yeah.
So
he had to wait. He was just too busy.
Respected, yeah.
Guys, you're forgetting about a really big screenplay he did, Taking Care of Business with Jim Belushi. I think.
That's right.
Did he really do that?
Yeah. I think that's like free Regarding Henry, but anyway.
TCOB.
Who and let me not to stray too far. We're getting around the end here, but who would Jim Belushi be if he was in the Dark Tower series?
Oh, he would be Oi.
Would he be the voice of Oi?
Mocap Oi. It would be
Mocap
Mocap.
Oi.
He'd be in a blue suit the entire time.
Oi. Oi!
Where are
play
we
ball.
going? Are we going back to Chicago?
Sweet home, Midworld.
If
like,
they,
wait.
if they were like, oh, we're gonna every once in a while we'll tap into Oi's his mind's voice, like just commenting on things, but they don't actually hear him.
Well, they look
a
over.
Belushi voiceover.
Always got like glasses on, like a little hat. And
He
just
could be the voice. What if he was the voice of Blaine the Mono? And then when they showed
Blaine's a pain. Hey,
when they showed Charlie the Choo Choo the book, it was like just Jim Belushi's face.
No, it's Jim Belushi's face with sunglasses and a hat.
Oh my god!
Just like Blues Brothers. All right, listen, Dan. I know you haven't seen the movie. I know you're dying to see it now after all the discussions we've had over the last few months with you about how great it is. But are we done with the movie for right now? I'm sure we'll be talking about it in a week. Are we good?
I think we're good. 2.5 bright red Pennywise clown noses for now.
2.5, okay.
Or maybe 3.
So you're saying it's subpar?
I like. Here's the thing. I really do love Idris Elba as in this role. Like I think the way he gives this like kind of quiet, nuanced. I mean, look, I know that sounds insane. It is a very nuanced performance by him because he doesn't get a lot, so he has to bring a lot with silent, like his kind of silence there. And maybe I'm just inferring a lot of this, but. I just thought he got that sort of stoicism to the character really well without coming off like a boring character. Because my problem with Roland is for me, he doesn't get really interesting until around Wizard and Glass when you get some more depth to him. Because he just comes off as more of just like this kind of stern character that. Actually, no, that's true. I really like him in Drawing of the Three when he's with Eddie. Like that's when I really start kind of liking him a little bit because then you kind of get to see some of that back and forth. But when he's with Jake, it was just kind of like it's so cold and removed because even when like Jake like falls and dies, he cares, but at the same time he's not really that like perturbed because obviously he still has his quest with the Dark Tower as much. But my thing with what I liked about the film is that you do actually get to see some of that fun real world versus mid world mentality, like especially when he finally when Jake and Roland actually get back to New York City in that great scene in the Gunslinger. They're like on the bus together and they're in the hospital and just his interactions with the real world are great.
And again, I love that, but the problem with the movie and with those sequences is it's just not earned. Like you jumping to those good moments, and you need to have the moments that where it's not like.
Well,
that.
I think the humor's earned. I don't know if
the humor.
I don't know if like the scenes itself are earned, but like because you needed to have some more of like. I mean, they just got to Midworld and they're back in the real world, which is insane.
Yeah.
And everything that happens with whatever tribe they're with, and that whole village is just.
Or just the reveal, like right out the gate, that there's Earth and there's Midworld and there's a parallel universe and like
they give away stuff that you don't find out about until the 7th book.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
the first
the portals
2
were
minutes.
really cool. They looked like they're from like Legends of the Hidden Temple or something.
It looked like it was a Stargate universe. So I was
Yeah,
waiting for
the
Robert
Stargate
Carlyle to
universe.
show up.
It did look like a sci-fi production.
Well, there's our umpteenth take on the Dark Tower.
I love how jumbled that
movie.
Conversation was. I think we had like 6 different like discussions at once.
You know what it sounds like? It sounds like Sony
Tower movie.
It does sound like the Dark Tower movie. Actually,
It sounds like Sony Pictures took our podcast. It was pretty good, and then they decided to jumble it together in a weird way, in a weird edit. And
you could personify me as the Sony MRC battle that walked into this probably very controlled and organized
absolutely.
podcast that you had before I came in here. So I guess
Well,
I guess
discussion
I'm
about
really
this-
the man in black at the end of the day.
the Roffin Black.
The Roffin in black.
Well, that was the Dark Tower, the Gunslinger discussion. Everybody, people popping in and out. How exciting was this episode?
Oh, on a side note, it should be telling how much we loved the movie by, or what we loved about the movie when you looked at our bookshelf and we have our Funko Pops. Which Funko Pop is missing that's available? The Man in Black, because we did not like Matthew McConaughey's portrayal, even though we were one of the first people to say that Matthew McConaughey would be good at Man in Black. I saw him available for sale for $10.99 at the Exchange, and I said, not happening.
I'll just
I
say
already have
one
Idris, and
thing
that's all I
about
need.
McConaughey. I think if McConaughey was portrayed as the guy in this book with the cloak, the black cloak, and you only saw him every once in a while, would have been great.
Give me like
I
Russ
still maintain
Cole.
he would have been great. But when he's showing up as somebody out of a fucking Vidal Sassoon commercial, he's got no hope. You know.
Well, he walked right out of the Lincoln commercials
it's
that
ridiculous.
ruined his reconnaissance, and continues to do this right now. Whatever.
You know, the movie's a mess. What can I say? Well, listen, everybody, thanks again to you, our constant listeners, for continuing to check out the Losers Club week to week. Please be sure to spread word about the podcast if you haven't already. If you haven't already, what more do you want from us? Be sure to leave us a review on iTunes, Facebook, Stitcher, Gornash, Humdrum, Skeetle, Schlechter. These are all made up ones. wherever you're listening to us. It really does help us. Our next book will be our first novella collection in a couple weeks. We'll be doing different seasons. I think we're going to split it up, right?
Oh, we're splitting this
because there's a lot to talk about.
We're
There's a lot of
spend
movies.
some time. We're going to spend a whole year with different seasons.
Yeah,
every
season
we'll just for every.
We'll
season.
do every 3 months. We'll just do one book.
No. We're just going to dedicate like 30 episodes to each season.
Oh, every week. It'll be like the Talking Cat podcast.
Yeah. Well, this episode we're going to be talking about the random guy who comes into Shawshank. And we're going to spend 2 hours talking about that. And then we're going to move on to Andy. And then we're going to move on to, never mind. We're not going to do that. We're not doing that. We'll have 4 episodes at most for these.
I was going to let you keep going, Mike.
You just leave me hanging. No, we'll have 4 episodes. I think 4 episodes would be good.
Oh, 4 episodes?
I think so.
Oh, I don't know.
I'll tell you right now, I love the breathing method, but there's no way we're going to do 3 hours on the breathing method. Well, I think we'll talk about it later. This is all behind the scenes stuff anyway.
We'll see. We'll figure it out.
A great day today. Hey, everybody listening, have a great morning, night, day, whatever is happening in your life. You'll hear from us again next week with more King news. But until then, long days and pleasant nights.
I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. But you know you want somebody to treat you good.
Consequence Podcast Network.